During a tense dinner with his daughter, the millionaire shouts, "You will marry whoever walks in next." Everyone in the restaurant falls silent, and when the door opens, the millionaire is completely shocked. The crystal chandeliers of La Hacienda real cast brilliant reflections across the pristine white tablecloths as Sofia Martinez adjusted her designer dress, trying to steady her trembling hands. Across the table, her father, Antonio Martinez, one of Mexico City's most powerful business magnates, studied the wine list with his characteristic scowl of disapproval, the same expression he'd worn throughout her entire life. "The 82 Bordeaux," he commanded without looking up at the hovering sommelier. "And make it quick." Sofia fought the urge to shrink in her chair. At 28, she was a successful architect with her own flourishing firm, yet one dinner with her father was enough to make her feel like a small child again. The weight of his expectations pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy cloak she couldn't shake off. "I've made all the arrangements," Antonio announced, his voice carrying that familiar tone of finality that brooked no argument. "Starting next month, you'll join the board of Martinez Enterprises. It's time you embraced your responsibilities to this family." Sofia's fingers clenched around her water glass. "Father, we've discussed this. I have my own career, my own dreams." "Dreams?" Antonio's laugh was sharp enough to draw curious glances from nearby tables. "Dreams don't build empires, Sofia. Sacrifice does. Dedication does. Your grandfather started this company with nothing but determination and raw ambition. I've spent 30 years expanding it into what it is today, and now it's your turn to continue that legacy." The sommelier returned with the wine, but Antonio waved him away impatiently. Sofia watched the deep red liquid splash against the crystal, feeling her resolve strengthen with each passing second. For too long, she'd allowed her father's iron will to overshadow her own desires. "I won't do it," she said quietly. Antonio's hand froze midway to his wineglass. "What did you say?" "I said no." Sofia's voice grew stronger. "I won't join the board. I won't abandon my architecture firm. And I won't let you manipulate me anymore." The restaurant's ambient chatter seemed to fade away as Antonio's face darkened. "You ungrateful child. Everything you have, your education, your connections, even that little firm you're so proud of, exists because of me. Because of this family's name and influence." "That's not true," Sofia countered, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I built my firm from the ground up. My clients choose me because of my talent, not my last name. I'm not a puppet you can control anymore, Father. I'm my own person." Antonio's fist crashed down on the table, sending silverware clattering and glasses wobbling. The entire restaurant fell silent, all eyes turning to their corner table. "Enough!" he roared, rising to his feet. His face was contorted with rage as he pointed an accusatory finger at his daughter. "You want to prove you're independent? Fine. You'll marry the next person who walks through that door." Sofia's blood ran cold as she stared at her father in disbelief. The restaurant's grand entrance suddenly seemed to loom larger, its heavy wooden doors holding the weight of her fate. The other diners held their collective breath, all attention focused on the dramatic scene unfolding before them. "You've lost your mind," Sofia whispered, but her father's expression remained unchanged, his eyes blazing with challenge. The doors began to creak open, and Sofia's heart stopped. Time seemed to slow as two figures emerged from the evening shadows. A young man and woman, their clothes worn and dusty, their faces bearing the unmistakable marks of life on the streets. Security guards immediately moved to intercept them, but Antonio's voice rang out with authority. "Let them in!" He turned to Sofia, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "Well, daughter? Are you ready to honor your family's legacy of keeping their word?" Sofia stared at the newcomers, her world spinning out of control. The young man stood tall despite his shabby appearance, his eyes meeting hers with an unexpected dignity that made her pause. The woman beside him showed similar strength, her chin lifted defiantly against the judgmental stares of the restaurant's wealthy patrons. "This is ridiculous," Sofia protested, her voice shaking. "You can't possibly—" "Oh, but I can," Antonio interrupted. "Either you agree to this marriage, or you'll find yourself cut off completely. No more trust fund, no more connections, no—" More safety net. Your choice, Sophia. What's it going to be? The restaurant had become a theater, the other diners silent spectators to this surreal drama. Sophia looked from her father's triumphant face to the mysterious pair at the door, feeling the walls of her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. In that moment, she realized that no matter what choice she made, nothing would ever be the same again. The young man at the door took a step forward, his worn boots silent against the plush carpet. Despite his weathered appearance, there was something in his bearing that commanded attention, a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with his circumstances. "Sir," he addressed Antonio directly, his voice clear and educated, "I couldn't help but overhear your proposition. Before you proceed with this absurd scenario, you should know who I am." Antonio's eyebrows rose slightly, but his smirk remained firmly in place. "Oh? And who might you be?" "My name is Daniel Ruiz. 3 years ago, I was the lead engineer at Tecnologia Inovadora." A flash of recognition crossed Antonio's face, but Daniel continued before he could speak. "Yes, the same company your corporation acquired and then dismantled, leaving hundreds of dedicated employees without jobs or severance." Sophia watched as her father's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The woman beside Daniel stepped forward, her presence equally compelling despite her humble appearance. "And I'm Laura Herrera," she announced, her voice steady. "Former financial analyst at Ciudad Bank, until your hostile takeover left us all, scrambling for survival." Her eyes met Sophia's with unexpected warmth. "We didn't come here to beg or cause trouble. We were simply looking for the restaurant's kitchen entrance to ask about leftover food." The other diners whispered among themselves, the drama unfolding before them better than any telenovela. Antonio's face had reddened, but his stance remained rigid, unyielding. "An interesting coincidence," he said smoothly, "but it changes nothing. My daughter made a choice, and now she must face the consequences." He turned to Sophia. "Well, what's your decision?" Sophia stood slowly, her mind racing. The situation was absurd, cruel, manipulative, everything her father excelled at. But as she looked at Daniel and Laura, she saw something else. An opportunity for rebellion, a chance to turn her father's game against him. "Fine," she said, her voice ice-cold. "I'll do it. I'll marry him." She turned to Daniel, whose expression had become unreadable. "If you're willing, of course." Daniel studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes seeming to peer straight through her carefully maintained facade. "You realize this is insane." "Welcome to my world," Sophia replied with a bitter laugh. "But think about it. What better way to challenge the man who destroyed your life than to become his son-in-law?" Laura stepped between them, her face concerned. "Daniel, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." But Daniel's expression had hardened into determination. "No, Laura. Maybe this is exactly what needs to happen." He turned to Antonio. "I accept your daughter's hand in marriage, Mr. Martinez, though I suspect this isn't quite the outcome you had in mind." Antonio's triumph had soured, but he was too proud to back down now. "Very well. We'll have the ceremony arranged by tomorrow evening. I trust you can find something appropriate to wear." "I'll take care of that," Laura interjected, her voice sharp. "After all, isn't that what family is for?" The word family hung in the air like a challenge. Sophia found herself studying Laura more closely, intrigued by her fierce loyalty to Daniel. There was clearly more to their story than met the eye. "Manuel!" Antonio snapped his fingers, summoning his personal assistant who had been hovering nervously nearby. "Make all the necessary arrangements. Call Judge Rivera, he owes me a favor, and find some suitable accommodations for our new family members." Sophia grabbed her purse, her movements decisive. "They'll stay with me tonight." "Since we're all about family now, aren't we, Father?" Antonio's jaw clenched, but he merely nodded curtly. The other diners were still watching, and he couldn't afford to lose face completely. As Sophia led Daniel and Laura toward the exit, she could feel the weight of dozens of stares on her back. Tomorrow, this would be all over the society pages. The Martinez heiress, marrying a homeless man on her father's orders. It was the scandal of the century. But as they stepped into the warm Mexico City night, Sophia felt something unexpected, a spark of defiance, of possibility. She turned to her unexpected companions, seeing in their faces the same mix of uncertainty and determination she felt herself. "Well," she said, fishing her car keys from her designer bag, "I suppose we have a wedding to plan." Sophia's penthouse, apartment in Polanco, felt different that night, its usual pristine silence replaced by an uncomfortable tension as she showed her unexpected guests around. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a glittering view of Mexico City's skyline, a stark contrast to the circumstances that had brought them all together. "The guest rooms are down this hall," she said, gesturing to the right. "There are clean towels in the bathrooms, and I can lend you both some clothes for tonight." Laura ran her hand along the smooth marble countertop of the kitchen island, her expression unreadable. "This is quite different from where we've been staying." "Where exactly is that?" Sophia asked, trying to keep her tone neutral despite her curiosity. "A shelter in Santa Fe," Daniel answered, his voice matter-of-fact. "When they have space. Otherwise, we manage." Sophia felt a familiar twist of guilt in her stomach. Santa Fe, the business district her father had helped develop, displacing hundreds of families in the process. She'd protested at the time, but not strongly enough. Never strongly enough. "I'll make some coffee," Laura offered, already moving around the kitchen with surprising confidence. "We have a lot to discuss, and I imagine none of us will be sleeping much tonight anyway." Daniel stood by the windows, his reflection overlaying the city lights. "Your father? He's always like that, isn't he? Using people as pawns in his games?" "For as long as I can remember," Sophia admitted, sinking onto her designer sofa. "But this time he's gone too far. I should never have let him provoke me into that ridiculous bet." "Yet here we are," Laura said, measuring coffee beans into the grinder. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Sophia looked between her two guests, really seeing them for the first time. Despite their worn clothes and obvious hardships, there was a strength in both of them that she recognized, the kind of strength that came from fighting against impossible odds. "Tell me about Tecnologia Innovadora," she said to Daniel. "I remember when my father acquired it, but I never knew the details." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It was more than just a company to us. We were developing sustainable technology solutions for low-income communities. Solar panels, water filtration systems, innovations that could have helped thousands of people. Your father saw the potential profit and moved in. Within 6 months, he'd stripped the company for parts and patents, leaving nothing but empty promises and unemployed workers. The same thing happened at Ciudad Bank," Laura added, bringing over 3 steaming cups of coffee. "Different industry, same story. Your father has a talent for finding successful businesses, acquiring them, and extracting maximum profit without regard for the human cost." Sophia wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug, her mind racing. "And now, he's trying to do the same thing to my architecture firm. He calls it embracing the family legacy, but it's really about control. It's always about control." "Which is why tomorrow's ceremony is so important," Laura said, sitting down beside her. "It's not just about the marriage. It's about taking a stand." Daniel turned from the window, his expression thoughtful. "We could use this situation to our advantage. Your father's reputation means everything to him, doesn't it?" Sophia nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And a scandal like this, it could force him to face the consequences of his actions for once. But it won't be easy," Laura warned. "Men like Antonio Martinez don't change overnight. He'll fight back, try to maintain control however he can." The 3 of them sat in contemplative silence, the city humming below. Sophia studied Daniel's profile, trying to reconcile the idea of him as her future husband. There was an intelligence in his eyes that intrigued her, a depth of character that her father had clearly underestimated. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked him suddenly. "You could have walked away." Daniel's smile was subtle but genuine. Sometimes the best way to fight injustice is from within the system that created it. Plus, he added with a hint of humor, "it's not every day you get to marry into one of Mexico's most powerful families." Laura rolled her eyes at his attempt at levity, But Sophia found herself smiling despite the absurdity of their situation. "We should try to get some rest," she said, standing. "Tomorrow will be interesting." As they headed to their respective rooms, Sophia paused in the hallway. "Thank you," she said softly, "both of you, for being willing to stand up to him with me." Laura squeezed her arm gently. "Get some sleep, Sophia. Tomorrow we begin changing the narrative." Alone in her room later, Sophia stood at her window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. Tomorrow she would marry a stranger, defy her father, and potentially lose everything she'd worked for. Yet somehow, for the first time in years, she felt truly awake, truly alive. The game had changed, and this time she wasn't playing by her father's rules anymore. The Martinez family's private chapel had never seen a wedding quite like this. 1. Afternoon sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across the small gathering of hastily assembled guests, mostly business associates and society figures who'd caught wind of the impending scandal and couldn't resist attending. Sophia stood before the ornate mirror in the preparation room, barely recognizing herself in the simple white dress Laura had helped her choose that morning. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding she'd once imagined, but somehow that felt appropriate for this act of rebellion. "The press is already gathering outside," Laura reported, slipping into the room. She'd borrowed one of Sophia's formal dresses, and the elegant blue fabric transformed her, highlighting the natural grace that hardship hadn't managed to diminish. "Your father's PR team is trying to control the narrative, but rumors are spreading fast." Sophia adjusted her minimal veil. "Let them talk. That's part of the plan, isn't it? Are you sure you're ready for this?" Laura's concern was evident in her reflection. "Once we go through with it, there's no going back. I've spent my entire life going along with his plans, his demands, his vision of who I should be." Sophia turned to face her newfound ally. "For once, I'm choosing my own path, even if it's not exactly what I had in mind." A knock at the door interrupted them. Antonio Martinez entered, his expensive suit immaculate as always, but his face betraying the strain of the situation. "The judge is ready, it's time." Sophia met her father's gaze in the mirror. "Having second thoughts, father. You could still call this off." "A Martinez never goes back on their word," he replied stiffly. "You made your choice last night, now we all have to live with it." The chapel fell silent as Sophia walked down the aisle on her father's arm. Daniel waited at the altar, and Sophia had to admit that he cut an impressive figure in the tailored suit Antonio's assistant had arranged. Their eyes met, and she saw in his expression the same mix of determination and uncertainty she felt herself. Judge Rivera, a longtime friend of the Martinez family, cleared his throat nervously as he began the ceremony. The traditional words seemed almost surreal in the context of their unusual circumstances. When it came time for the vows, Daniel's voice was clear and steady. "I, Daniel Ruiz, take you, Sophia Martinez, as my wife." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I promise to stand by you, to support your dreams, and to face whatever challenges come our way together." Sophia's own vows trembled slightly on her lips, but her resolve remained firm. "I, Sophia Martinez, take you, Daniel Ruiz, as my husband. I promise to stand with you in truth and justice, to support your goals, and to never let fear prevent us from doing what's right." As they exchanged rings, simple bands hastily purchased that morning, Sophia caught sight of Laura in the front row, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. Behind her, the assembled guests whispered among themselves, no doubt already composing the social media posts that would set Mexico City's elite abuzz. "By the power vested in me," Judge Rivera concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The kiss they shared was brief and formal, but Sophia felt an unexpected spark of connection. Daniel's hand was warm and steady as he helped her down the altar steps, both of them facing the crowd of onlookers with their heads held high. The reception that followed in the Martinez mansion's grand ballroom was a study in controlled chaos. Antonio had insisted on maintaining appearances with a proper celebration, but the atmosphere was tense, with unspoken questions and judgments. "Smile for the cameras, dear," Antonio muttered through clenched teeth as photographers circled like sharks. "We wouldn't want anyone thinking this was anything less than a love match. Wouldn't we, Father?" Sophia replied sweetly, her hand tightening on Daniel's arm. "I thought the whole point was to teach me a lesson about defying you." Before Antonio could respond, Laura appeared at their side, champagne glasses in hand. "A toast to the happy couple," she announced, her voice carrying just far enough to draw attention. "And to new beginnings that remind us all that love can flourish in the most unexpected places." The gathered guests raised their glasses automatically, years of social training taking over. Sophia watched her father's face darken at Laura's subtle manipulation of the situation, and she felt a surge of gratitude for her new friend's quick thinking. As the evening wore on, Sophia found herself increasingly drawn into quiet conversations with Daniel, discovering layers to him that surprised her. He spoke passionately about his engineering projects, about the people he'd tried to help, about his dreams for the future that hadn't died despite everything he'd lost. "This isn't the end of your story," she told him during a quiet moment on the balcony. "Maybe it's just the beginning of a new chapter for all of us." Daniel studied her thoughtfully. "You're nothing like what I expected, Sofia Martinez." "Sofia Ruiz now technically," she corrected with a slight smile. "At least for as long as this arrangement lasts." "And how long will that be?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, Laura's voice called them back inside. The party was winding down, and reality was waiting to crash back in. Tomorrow they would have to figure out how to navigate their new lives together, how to use this bizarre situation to create real change. But for now, Sophia let herself be led back into the ballroom, where the lights sparkled off crystal glasses and wedding rings, and nothing was quite what it seemed to be. The morning after the wedding, Sophia's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News alerts, messages, and social media notifications flooded her screen as Mexico City's elite processed the scandal. She sat at her kitchen island, scrolling through headlines. That seemed more suited to fiction than reality. "Martinez Harris weds homeless engineer, a modern fairy tale or corporate scandal," she read aloud, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The billion-dollar bet. Inside the wedding that shocked Mexican society." Daniel looked up from his coffee, his expression thoughtful. "They're missing the real story." "And what's that?" Sophia asked, raising an eyebrow. "The systematic destruction of companies like Tecnología Innovadora, the lives your father's business practices have ruined." He pushed his tablet across the counter, showing her the financial reports he'd been reviewing. "While everyone's focused on our unusual marriage, they're ignoring the pattern of corporate takeovers and dismantlement that led to this moment." Laura entered the kitchen, already dressed for the day in another borrowed outfit. "We need to shift the narrative. Use this attention to expose the truth." Sophia set down her phone, considering their words. The past 24 hours had transformed her life in ways she was still struggling to process. But maybe that transformation could serve a greater purpose. "My father's coming for lunch," she announced. "He insists on discussing our public relations strategy." "Perfect timing," Laura said, a glint of determination in her eyes. "I've been working on something that might interest both of you." She pulled out her own laptop, opening a detailed presentation. "While you were dealing with the press this morning, I've been drafting a proposal for a foundation, one that would help rebuild communities affected by corporate takeovers, providing resources and opportunities for displaced workers." Daniel leaned forward, intrigued. "Using the Martinez family's own resources to undo some of the damage they've caused?" "Exactly," Laura confirmed. "And with Sophia's architectural expertise, we could literally rebuild what was torn down." Before they could discuss further, the elevator chimed, announcing Antonio's arrival. He strode into the penthouse like he owned it, which, Sophia reminded herself bitterly, he technically did. "This circus needs to end," he declared without preamble. "I've arranged interviews with sympathetic journalists. We'll present this as a love match. Two people from different worlds finding each other. The public loves an unlikely romance." Sophia exchanged glances with Daniel and Laura. "Actually, Father, we have a different proposal. For the next hour, they presented Laura's foundation idea. Sophia watched her father's face carefully as they explained their vision, an organization dedicated to sustainable development, worker retraining, and community support. To her surprise, Antonio listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. "Absolutely not," he said finally. "You want me to publicly admit wrongdoing? To suggest that Martinez Enterprises' business practices need correction? It would tank our stock price and embolden our competitors." "It would show leadership," Sophia countered. "Demonstrate that our family can adapt, can prioritize more than just profit." "And if we refuse?" Daniel asked quietly. Antonio's smile was cold. "Then perhaps I'll need to reevaluate certain arrangements, including my daughter's continued role in her own firm." Sophia felt her heart rate spike, but she kept her voice steady. "Is that a threat, Father?" "A reminder," he corrected smoothly, "of where true power lies in this family." He stood, adjusting his perfect suit. "Fix this mess, Sophia, before I'm forced to fix it for you." After he left, the three sat in heavy silence. Laura was the first to speak. "He's scared." "What?" Sophia turned to her in surprise. "Think about it," Laura explained. "He's not just angry, he's terrified. This situation threatens everything he's built, everything he believes in. His reaction proves we're on the right track." Daniel nodded slowly. "She's right, and we can use that fear. Your father's weakness is his reputation, his legacy. If we can show him that adapting to change is better than resisting it." "We need allies," Sophia realized. "Other business leaders who've seen the damage my father's practices have caused, former employees willing to speak out." She pulled Laura's laptop closer, studying the foundation proposal. "And we need to make this bigger than just our story." The rest of the afternoon passed in a flurry of planning. They reached out to contacts, drafted press statements, and refined their strategy. Sophia found herself increasingly impressed by Laura's business acumen and Daniel's technical expertise. Together, they were forming a formidable team. As evening approached, Sophia stood on her balcony, watching the city lights come alive. Daniel joined her, offering a glass of wine. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "About defying my father?" "No." She turned to face him. "But I am worried about the cost. He won't give up easily." "Then neither will we." Daniel's voice was firm. "You know, when I first lost everything, I thought my life was over. But standing here now, I realize that sometimes losing everything is just the beginning of building something better." Sophia studied his profile in the fading light, seeing past the circumstances that had brought them together to the person beneath. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being willing to fight this battle with me." Inside, Laura was still working, her dedication evident in every keystroke. Sophia watched her through the glass doors, grateful for this unexpected alliance. Whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone anymore. The city sparkled below them, a reminder of all that was at stake. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, but tonight, in this moment, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The Martinez Enterprises headquarters dominated the Mexico City skyline, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun like a shield of light. Sophia hadn't visited her father's office in months, but today's board meeting demanded her presence. As she rode the elevator to the top floor, Daniel and Laura's words from their strategy session echoed in her mind. The boardroom fell silent as she entered, all eyes following her progress to her seat. These men and women had known her since childhood, had watched her grow up under her father's demanding guidance. Now they regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. No doubt wondering if the society papers' speculation about her mental state was accurate. "Sophia," Antonio acknowledged coolly from the head of the table, "so glad you could join us. We were just discussing the company's latest acquisition plans." She recognized his tone, the same one he'd used countless times to put her in her place, but this time she was ready. "Before we proceed," she announced, pulling out her tablet, "I'd like to propose an alternative strategy for the board's consideration." Antonio's eyes narrowed, but corporate protocol prevented him from silencing her outright. Sophia launched into the presentation she, Daniel, and Laura had prepared, outlining their vision for a more sustainable business model. Instead of dismantling acquired companies, she explained, her voice gaining strength, we could focus on integration and development. The foundation we're proposing would work alongside Martinez Enterprises, creating a positive cycle of growth and community support. This is absurd, Antonio interrupted, his patience finally breaking. The board doesn't need to hear these naive fantasies. Actually, one of the older board members spoke up, I'd like to hear more about the potential tax benefits of this foundation structure. For the next hour, Sophia defended their proposal against increasingly detailed questions. Her father's face grew darker with each passing minute as more board members showed interest in the concept. The meeting ended without any concrete decisions, but Sophia could feel the shift in the room's energy. As the board members filed out, several paused to speak with her privately, expressing cautious support for her ideas. You've made a serious mistake, Antonio said once they were alone. This company operates the way it does for a reason. Your little rebellion ends now. Or what, father? Sophia met his gaze steadily. You'll arrange another improvised wedding? Force me to marry someone else? Your husband, Antonio spat the word like it tasted bitter, is a liability. Did you know he's been meeting with our competitors, sharing stories about his time at Tecnologia Innovadora? Sophia felt her heart skip a beat, but kept her expression neutral. Daniel hadn't mentioned any meetings, but she trusted there was. More to the story than her father's version. Returning to her penthouse that evening, Sophia found Daniel and Laura in intense discussion over dinner. The scene was surprisingly domestic, and something in her chest tightened at the sight. How did it go? Laura asked, pushing a plate of food toward her. Better than expected, Sophia replied, sinking into a chair. But my father mentioned something interesting. Have you been meeting with his competitors, Daniel? The tension in the room shifted instantly. Daniel set down his fork, his expression serious. Yes, but not for the reasons he thinks. I've been gathering evidence of similar patterns across multiple companies, building a case. You could have told me, Sophia said quietly. I wanted to protect you, he admitted. Give you deniability if things went wrong. Laura reached across the table, touching Sophia's hand. We're all taking risks here. The question is, are we taking them together or separately? The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions and complications. Sophia looked at these two people who had crashed into her life so unexpectedly. Daniel, her husband of convenience who was proving to be more than she'd imagined. Laura, whose strength and intelligence had become a cornerstone of their resistance. Together, Sophia decided firmly. No more secrets. If we're going to challenge my father's empire, we need to trust each other completely. Daniel's relief was visible. There's more you need to know about why Tecnologia Innovadora was really targeted, about the people involved. They talked late into the night, sharing information and strategies, building trust with each revelation. Sophia found herself studying Daniel's face as he spoke passionately about his former colleagues, noting how his eyes lit up when discussing technical innovations. She caught Laura watching them both with an unreadable expression, her own role in their unusual triangle growing more complex by the day. As midnight approached, Sophia stood by her favorite window, the city spread out before her like a map of possibilities. Daniel joined her, their shoulders barely touching. Your father won't give up easily, he warned. I know, she replied, but neither will we. Behind them, Laura worked on her laptop, updating their foundation proposals based on the board's feedback. The three of them had formed an unlikely alliance, bound together by circumstance but growing stronger through choice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles in their war against corporate greed and family expectations. But tonight, in the quiet of her penthouse, Sophia felt the first stirrings of something unexpected, not just hope but possibility. The skies over Mexico City darkened with approaching rain as Sophia reviewed the latest architectural plans in her office. The past week had been a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and strategy sessions. Her firm's clients were understandably concerned about the media attention, and she'd spent countless hours reassuring them that her personal life wouldn't affect their projects. A gentle knock interrupted her concentration. Laura stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing one of the professional outfits they'd bought during a rushed shopping trip. The transformation in her appearance was remarkable, but Sophia had learned it was Laura's sharp mind that truly set her apart. "You look like you could use this," Laura said, placing 1 cup on Sophia's desk. "The foundation's legal paperwork just came through. We're officially registered as a non-profit organization." Sophia leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a small smile. "That's the first piece of good news I've had all day. Have you seen the business section?" Laura nodded grimly. "Your father's latest interview. He's positioning himself as the concerned parent, worried about his daughter's impulsive decisions and questionable associations. Classic Antonio Martinez strategy," Sophia sighed. "Discredit the opposition while maintaining the appearance of caring." "It's not just that," Laura hesitated, then pulled up an email on her tablet. "Some of our potential donors are getting pressure to withdraw their support. Anonymous calls, subtle threats about business relationships." Sophia felt her jaw tighten. "He's trying to strangle the foundation before it can start operating." "There's more," Laura added softly. "Daniel's been receiving similar warnings. Former colleagues suddenly won't return his calls. Engineering firms that were interested in consulting with him are backing out." The mention of Daniel brought a complicated flutter to Sophia's stomach. Over the past weeks, their arranged marriage had evolved into something unexpected. Not quite love, but definitely more than convenience. She discovered his dry sense of humor, his passionate commitment to ethical engineering, and his surprising talent for cooking traditional Mexican dishes. "Where is he now?" Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Meeting with a journalist from El Universal. They're interested in the full story behind Tecnología Innovadora's collapse." Laura's expression was carefully neutral. "He's good at this, you know. Getting people to listen, to care about the bigger picture." Sophia studied her friend's face, noting the slight softness in her voice when she spoke about Daniel. The dynamics between the 3 of them had grown increasingly complex, filled with unspoken emotions and careful boundaries. "We need to accelerate our plans," Sophia decided, standing up. "My father's not just fighting the foundation, he's trying to isolate us, cut off our support systems." As if summoned by her words, Sophia's phone buzzed with a message from her bank. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. "He's frozen my personal accounts," she announced, her voice tight with anger. "Apparently there are concerns about unauthorized transactions." Laura moved closer, her presence steadying. "We anticipated this might happen. That's why we set up the separate foundation accounts. And my old banking connections have proved useful. We have contingency funds ready." Sophia looked at her friend with newfound appreciation. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Someone has to," Laura smiled. "You and Daniel are the visionaries. I'm the one who makes sure we can actually achieve those visions." The rain finally broke outside, drumming against the office windows. Sophia watched the streams of water transform the city view, thinking about how much her life had changed in such a short time. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "before all this happened, I was so focused on proving myself to my father, on earning his approval while maintaining my independence. It seems ridiculous now." "It's not ridiculous to want your parents' love," Laura replied gently. "What's ridiculous is how he's chosen to use that desire against you." Sophia's phone buzzed again, Daniel this time. The interview had gone well, but he'd discovered something concerning. He needed to meet with them right away. "Your place or mine?" Sophia texted back, then caught herself. Technically, they shared her penthouse. Now, though, Daniel still maintained a respectful distance, sleeping in one of the guest rooms. "The cafe near the park," he replied. "It's not safe to talk at home anymore." Laura read the exchange over Sophia's shoulder, her expression darkening. "He thinks your father's having the penthouse watched?" "Probably," Sophia admitted. "I noticed a car following me yesterday, and the doorman's been asking more questions than usual." They gathered their things quickly, Sophia pausing only to instruct her assistant to reschedule her afternoon appointments. As they waited for the elevator, Laura suddenly touched Sophia's arm. "Whatever happens," she said seriously, "you're not alone in this anymore. You know that, right?" Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. "I know," she managed. "Sometimes I think that's what scares my father the most, that I've found people who support me for who I am, not what he wants me to be." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. As they descended to the lobby, Sophia squared her shoulders, preparing for whatever news Daniel had discovered. The game was changing, the stakes rising, but she was no longer the obedient daughter, scrambling for approval. She was a woman with a purpose, surrounded by people she trusted, fighting for something bigger than herself, and no amount of financial pressure or social manipulation could change that fundamental truth. The rain had eased to a gentle drizzle. As they stepped outside, the air fresh with possibility. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The cafe near Chapultepec Park was busy enough to provide anonymity, but quiet enough for private conversation. Daniel was already waiting, at a corner table when Sophia and Laura arrived, his expression grave. A newspaper lay folded beside his coffee cup, its headlines screaming about corporate scandals and family drama. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked as they sat down, noting the tension in his shoulders. "I found out why your father was so eager to destroy Tecnologia Innovadora," Daniel replied, his voice low. "It wasn't just about profits. The company was developing technology that could have exposed some of Martinez Enterprises' less ethical practices." Laura leaned forward, her business instincts engaged. "What kind of practices?" "Environmental violations primarily. Our monitoring systems could detect and track industrial pollution at a level that would have made it impossible to hide contamination." Daniel's hands clenched around his coffee cup. "When your father realized what our technology could do, he didn't just want to acquire the company, he wanted to bury the research." Sophia felt the ground shift beneath her feet again. She'd known her father was ruthless in business, but this was different. This was deliberate harm. "There's more," Daniel continued. "I've been in contact with other former employees. They're willing to come forward, to share what they know, but they're scared. Your father's influence runs deep." "We'll protect them," Laura declared. "The foundation can provide legal support, security if necessary." Sophia watched the interaction between them, noting how Daniel's expression softened when Laura spoke, how she unconsciously mirrored his posture. The complexity of their relationships had only grown over the past weeks, creating an emotional landscape as challenging as their external battles. "My father's going to retaliate," Sophia said quietly. "When this information goes public, he'll come after all of us." "He's already starting," Daniel confirmed. "Someone broke into my old apartment last night. They took my research files, my backup drives." "Why didn't you tell us immediately?" Laura demanded, concern sharpening her voice. "Because I've learned to keep the most important evidence elsewhere," he smiled slightly. "After losing everything, once you develop contingency plans." Sophia reached across the table, taking his hand. The gesture felt natural now, though it had begun as part of their public performance as newlyweds. "You should have called us. We agreed. No more secrets." "I know," he squeezed her hand gently. "I'm still getting used to having people to rely on." Laura watched their joined hands with an unreadable expression. "We need to move faster. Get the story out before your father can control the narrative." The waiter arrived with fresh coffee, giving them a moment to compose themselves. When he left, Sophia noticed a familiar car parking across the street. "We're being watched," she murmured. "Black SUV, tinted windows?" "Your father's security team," Laura confirmed. "They've been following me too." Daniel's jaw tightened. "This ends now. We can't keep living under surveillance, waiting for his next move." "What are you suggesting?" Sophia asked, though part of her already knew. "We go public with everything. The environmental violations, the corporate espionage, the forced marriage, all of it. But we do it our way, on our terms." Laura was already pulling out her laptop. "I can have a press conference organized by tomorrow morning. The Foundation's official launch would be the perfect platform." Sophia felt a sudden surge of emotion, gratitude for these two people who had become so essential to her life, fear for what they were about to face, and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. "If we do this," she said carefully, "there's no going back. My father will use everything he has against us. We're already past the point of no return, Daniel replied softly. "The question is, are we ready to finish what we started?" Laura reached out, placing her hand over their still joined ones. The contact sent a spark through Sophia, making her acutely aware of the electricity between the three of them. "Together," Laura said firmly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." They spent the next few hours planning, their heads bent close over Laura's laptop, occasionally touching, sharing smiles and worried glances. The cafe emptied and refilled around them as the afternoon faded into evening. Finally, as the sun set over Chapultepec Park, they gathered their things to leave. The black SUV was still waiting outside, a reminder of the challenges ahead. "Stay at my place tonight," Sophia said to Laura. "Both of you, we shouldn't be alone right now." The words held multiple meanings, acknowledged but not yet explored. They walked back to Sophia's penthouse together, their shoulders brushing, their steps in sync. The city hummed around them, oblivious to the storm they were about to unleash. Later that night, as they sat on Sophia's balcony sharing wine and quiet conversation, she looked at her unlikely family. Her husband of convenience, who had become so much more, her friend whose strength and loyalty had transformed her life. Tomorrow they would challenge one of Mexico's most powerful men. Tonight they had each other, and somehow that felt like enough. The lights of Mexico City sparkled below them, a testament to all they were fighting to protect. Whatever came next, they would face it together, their bonds stronger than any force trying to tear them apart. The Foundation's press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the Hotel St. Regis, but by 8, the lobby was already buzzing with journalists. Sophia stood in front of the mirror in one of the hotel's luxury suites, adjusting her blazer with trembling fingers. The woman who looked back at her seemed different somehow, stronger, more determined than the socialite who had once lived for her father's approval. "The room's packed," Laura announced, entering with her tablet in hand. She looked elegant and professional in a navy suit, her natural confidence shining through. "Every major news outlet in Mexico is here, plus international press. Your father's PR team is trying to get the hotel to cancel, but I've handled it." "Any sign of him?" Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. "He's on his way. Our sources say he left the office as soon as he heard about the press conference." Laura moved closer, straightening Sophia's collar with gentle hands. "Are you ready for this?" Before Sophia could answer, Daniel entered, his face tight with concern. "We have a problem. Someone leaked documents to the press. Selective information, painting Tecnología Innovadora as a failed company that was hemorrhaging money. They're trying to discredit us before we even start." "My father's work," Sophia said grimly. "He's always believed the best defense is a strong offense." Laura was already scrolling through news feeds. "It's not working. If anything, the leaked documents are drawing more attention to the story. People are asking why Martinez Enterprises would bother discrediting a supposedly failing company." They gathered their materials, years of evidence and testimony carefully compiled into a devastating presentation. As they prepared to head downstairs, Sophia caught Daniel's hand. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "I want you to know that I don't regret any of it. This marriage may have started as my father's punishment, but it's become something else entirely." Daniel's eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Sophia." "We should go," Laura interrupted, gently. "The press is waiting." The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a media center. Cameras and journalists packed tight as sardines. Sophia took her place at the podium, Daniel and Laura flanking her like guardians. The lights were blinding, the air electric, with anticipation. "Good morning," Sophia began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're here today to tell you a story about power, corruption, and the cost of unchecked corporate greed. But more importantly, we're here to talk about hope, about the possibility of change, and about the courage it takes to stand up for what's right." She was halfway through outlining the environmental violations when the ballroom doors burst open. Antonio Martinez strode in, followed by a team of lawyers and PR specialists. His face was a mask of cold fury. "This ends now," he announced, his voice carrying over the startled murmurs of the press. "My daughter is clearly unwell, suffering from the emotional strain of her recent, impulsive decisions. Sophia felt Daniel tense beside her, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. "Actually, Father, I've never been clearer about anything in my life. Would you like to comment on these satellite images showing toxic waste dumping at Martinez Enterprises facilities?" The images appeared on the giant screen behind her, damning evidence impossible to ignore. Antonio's face went pale, then red, with rage. "You ungrateful child," he snarled, forgetting the cameras, the witnesses, everything except his wounded pride. "After everything I've given you, everything I've built for this family." "You built an empire on broken promises and buried truths," Sophia countered, her voice growing stronger. "But today, we're offering something different. The Martinez Foundation will work to repair the damage, to help communities rebuild, to support sustainable development that benefits everyone, not just the wealthy few." Laura stepped forward, presenting detailed plans for community rehabilitation projects. Daniel followed with technical explanations of green technology initiatives. The journalists were scribbling frantically, cameras flashing like lightning, in a storm. Antonio watched in barely contained fury as his carefully constructed world began to crumble. "This is business," he spat. "The real world. Your naive idealism will destroy everything I've worked for." "Maybe some things need to be destroyed to be rebuilt better," Sophia replied calmly. "You taught me that, Father. Though perhaps not in the way you intended." The press conference stretched for hours, each revelation more damaging than the last. Through it all, Sophia felt anchored by Daniel's steady presence and Laura's unwavering support. They had become more than allies. In this fight, they were her family, chosen and true. As the last journalist filed out, Antonio approached their table. His anger had cooled into something more dangerous, calculated determination. "You've made your choice," he said quietly. "Now you'll have to live with the consequences." "Is that a threat?" Daniel stepped forward protectively. "A promise," Antonio replied. "You think you know how to play this game? You haven't seen anything yet." He turned and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. Sophia watched him go, feeling a complex mix of emotions: sadness for what might have been, determination for what must be done. Laura's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "Phase 1 is complete. Are you ready for what comes next?" Sophia looked between her two companions, these unlikely saviors who had helped her find her own strength. "With you both, I'm ready for anything." They left the hotel together, stepping into a Mexico City afternoon that felt different somehow, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. The storm had broken, but they were still standing, still fighting, still together. And somewhere in the city, Antonio Martinez was already planning his counterattack. The aftermath of the press conference hit like a hurricane. Within hours, Martinez Enterprises stock had plummeted. Social media was ablaze with hashtags demanding corporate accountability, and Sophia's phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. She sat in her office, watching the sun set over Mexico City, when her computer screen suddenly went black. "We've lost internet access," her assistant called from the outer office, "and the phones are down too." Laura appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. "It's not just here. All your firm's project sites have lost connectivity. Your father's telecommunications subsidiary controls the infrastructure." "He's trying to cripple my business," Sophia realized, her hands clenching into fists. "Show potential clients that working with me means risking their own projects." "We anticipated this," Daniel said, entering with his laptop open. "I've already contacted independent providers. We can have new systems up and running by tomorrow morning." Sophia looked at him gratefully, still amazed by how quickly he could solve problems she hadn't even considered. The past weeks had taught her to appreciate not just his technical skills, but his ability to stay calm under pressure. "There's more," Laura added, sliding a document across Sophia's desk. "The bank is calling in your business loans, all of them. They're citing unusual activity and risk reassessment." "My father's banking connections," Sophia nodded, unsurprised. "He's trying to force us to default." "Not if I can help it," Laura's eyes gleamed with determination. "Remember those contingency funds I mentioned? I've been talking to international investors who are very interested in supporting our cause. Clean technology, sustainable development, social responsibility. These aren't just buzzwords anymore, they're the future. The office felt smaller somehow, more intimate as the three of them huddled around Sophia's desk, planning their next moves. The city lights began to twinkle outside, creating a backdrop of diamond-like stars against the darkening sky. "We should move to a safer location," Daniel suggested, his hand resting protectively on Sophia's shoulder. "Your father knows every security guard in this building. It's not safe to stay here after dark." As if to emphasize his point, the emergency lights flickered ominously. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine, remembering her father's parting words at the press conference. "We can go to my place," Laura offered. "It's a small apartment in Roma Norte, but it's secure. And more importantly, it's under a different name. Your father won't find us there." The decision to leave was made just in time. As they reached the parking garage, they spotted several of Antonio's security team entering the building. The three of them slipped away in Laura's modest car, blending into the evening traffic. Laura's apartment was indeed small, but it felt warm and welcoming. Books lined the walls, plants crowded the windowsills, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. It was nothing like Sophia's luxury penthouse, but somehow it felt more like home. "I'll take the couch," Laura announced, but Sophia shook her head. "We've imposed enough. Daniel and I can—" "Stay," Laura interrupted softly. "Both of you, please." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Sophia found herself studying Laura's face, seeing the same mixture of emotions she felt reflected there. Daniel stood by the window, his silhouette outlined against the city lights, completing their triangle of trust and complexity. They ordered takeout and spread documents across Laura's coffee table, working late into the night. The Foundation's phone hadn't stopped ringing, supporters offering help, whistleblowers coming forward with new evidence, community leaders eager to participate in their initiatives. "Look at this," Daniel said suddenly, pointing to his screen. "Former Martinez Enterprises employees are organizing. They're planning to speak out about similar experiences across multiple subsidiaries. The dam is breaking," Laura nodded. "Once people see others standing up, they find their own courage." Sophia watched them work together, noting the easy way. They anticipated each other's thoughts, the subtle touches and shared glances. Their relationship had evolved into something beautiful and complicated, defying conventional labels. As midnight approached, exhaustion finally overtook them. Laura disappeared into her bedroom and returned with pillows and blankets, transforming her living room into a cozy nest. They settled in together, closer than propriety might suggest, but exactly where they needed to be. "What happens tomorrow?" Sophia asked softly, her head resting against Daniel's shoulder, her hand entwined with Laura's. "We keep fighting," Laura replied simply. "We build something better than what your father tried to destroy." "Together," Daniel added, his voice warm with certainty. Sophia closed her eyes, feeling safer here in this small apartment with these two people than she ever had in her father's mansion. Outside, Mexico City continued its eternal dance of light and shadow, but in here, they had created their own sanctuary. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight, but tonight, surrounded by love that defied explanation and loyalty, that transcended circumstance, Sophia finally felt truly home. The war with her father was far from over, but she was no longer fighting alone. In losing everything he had tried to force upon her, she had found something far more precious, a family of her own choosing, bound by love, trust, and shared purpose. And no amount of corporate power could take that away. The morning light filtered through Laura's apartment windows, casting warm patterns on the sleeping figures sprawled across her living room. Sophia woke first, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Daniel's arm was draped protectively around her waist, while Laura had fallen asleep holding her hand. The intimacy of the moment made her heart flutter. Her phone vibrated quietly on the coffee table. The caller ID showed her mother's number, a rare occurrence that immediately set off warning bells in Sophia's mind. Carefully extracting herself from the tangle of limbs and blankets, she stepped onto the small balcony. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Sofia, mi amor." Elena Martinez's voice trembled with emotion. "You need to come to the house. Right now, there's something you must know. Something I should have told you years ago." "What are you talking about?" "If this is Father's attempt to—" "This isn't about your father," Elena interrupted. "This is about Tecnologia Innovadora, about what really happened 3 years ago." Sofia's grip tightened on her phone. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain over the phone." "Please, Carino, come alone. This is important." By the time Sofia ended the call, Daniel and Laura were awake, watching her with concern. "It's my mother," she explained. "She says she has information about Tecnologia Innovadora. She wants me to come to the house." "It's a trap," Laura said immediately. "Your father's using her to get to you." Daniel nodded in agreement. "It's too dangerous. Let me go instead." "No," Sofia cut him off gently. "You don't know my mother. When she uses that tone, something's really wrong, and she specifically said to come alone." They argued for nearly an hour, but in the end, Sofia's determination won out. She borrowed Laura's car, promising to stay in constant contact through their secure messaging system. The Martinez family mansion looked exactly as it had when Sofia left weeks ago, its manicured gardens and imposing facade a monument to wealth and power. Her mother waited in the conservatory, her elegant appearance betraying signs of strain around the eyes. "What's this about, Mama?" Elena gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, mi amor. What I'm about to tell you, it will change everything." She pulled out an old leather portfolio, its pages yellowed with age. "Before I married your father, I worked as an environmental engineer. Did you know that?" Sofia shook her head, surprised. Her mother had always been the perfect society wife, never mentioning a career of her own. "I was working on clean energy projects, trying to make a difference." Elena's hands trembled as she opened the portfolio. "When I met Antonio, he seemed to share my vision. He promised to use Martinez Enterprises to support sustainable development, but after we married, everything changed." She spread out technical drawings and environmental impact reports, all bearing dates from decades ago. "These were my designs, prototypes for clean energy systems very similar to what Tecnologia Innovadora was developing." Sofia leaned forward, her heart racing. "What are you saying?" "Your father didn't just target that company because of their monitoring capabilities. He did it because I had helped them, secretly providing my old research, guiding them toward solutions I had developed years ago." The revelation hit Sofia like a physical blow. "You were working with them all this time?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't stand by and watch history repeat itself. When I heard what they were working on, I reached out anonymously. Daniel Ruiz, he reminded me so much of myself at that age. The same idealism, the same determination to make things better." Sofia's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, probably Laura and Daniel wondering why she hadn't checked in. But she couldn't look away from her mother's face, from the years of hidden pain and rebellion she saw there. "Does father know?" "He suspected, but he could never prove it. That's why he moved so aggressively to shut them down. He couldn't risk anyone discovering that his own wife had been working against his interests." Elena reached across the table, gripping Sofia's hands. "I'm telling you this now because you need to understand. The foundation you're building, the changes you're fighting for, they're not just about fixing your father's mistakes. They're about fulfilling a dream that was buried decades ago." Outside the conservatory windows, dark clouds gathered, promising rain. Sofia felt the weight of her mother's words, of generations of buried hopes and silenced voices. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "To protect you. And because I was a coward," Elena admitted. "I let fear of your father's anger keep me silent for too long. But watching you these past weeks, your courage, your determination, I can't stay silent anymore." She pushed the portfolio toward Sofia. "Take these, use them. They prove that the technology existed long before Tecnologia Innovadora. Your father can't claim intellectual property rights over something that was developed independently years ago." Sofia's phone buzzed again, more urgently this time. When she finally checked it, She found dozens of messages from Laura and Daniel, warning her that Antonio was on his way to the mansion. "You have to go," Elena said, hearing cars approaching on the gravel driveway. "Take the service entrance. I'll handle your father." Sophia hugged her mother tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of her perfume. "Come with me. You don't have to stay here." "Not yet," Elena smiled sadly. "I have my own part to play in this fight. Now go. Your real family is waiting for you." As Sophia slipped away through the back gardens, clutching the precious portfolio, she heard her father's voice booming through the mansion. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of his anger. Her mother's revelation had given her something more powerful than fear: understanding. The rain began to fall as she drove back to Laura's apartment, the portfolio secure beside her. Her mother's secret would change everything, not just their fight against Martinez Enterprises, but her understanding of rebellion, of love, and of the quiet ways people fought to make the world better. Daniel and Laura were waiting anxiously at the door when she arrived, soaked from the rain but triumphant. As she shared her mother's story, she watched their faces transform with hope and possibility. They had thought they were fighting Antonio's empire. Now they knew they were continuing a battle that had started long ago, sparked by another woman who had dared to dream of something better. The rain drummed against the windows, but inside Laura's apartment, the atmosphere crackled with renewed purpose. They had found not just evidence but legacy, a torch passed down from mother to daughter, waiting to finally burst into flame. The rain continued through the evening as Sophia, Daniel and Laura poured over Elena's portfolio, spread across Laura's dining table. Each page revealed new layers of history, carefully documented research, innovative designs, and personal notes that painted a picture of a brilliant mind forced into silence. "These designs," Daniel breathed, his fingers tracing the technical drawings, "they're decades ahead of their time. The core concepts we were working on at Tecnologia Innovadora, your mother had already solved many of the fundamental problems." Laura was focused on the environmental impact reports. Look at these projections. She wasn't just thinking about technology. She was considering social impact, community development, long-term sustainability. It's exactly what we're trying to do with the foundation. Sophia sat between them, feeling the weight of her mother's legacy. "All these years I thought she was just complicit, playing the perfect corporate wife while my father built his empire. But she was fighting in her own way, passing on her knowledge, trying to make a difference without putting herself at risk." "Like a secret resistance," Laura said softly, her hand finding Sophia's under the table, never confronting the empire directly, but working to change it from within. Daniel's phone chimed with news alerts. "Your father's called an emergency. Board meeting for tomorrow morning. He must know about Elena's involvement. He's trying to get ahead of the story." "Let him try," Sophia replied, her voice steady. "We have something he can't fight anymore. The truth, not just about Tecnologia Innovadora, but about years of suppressed innovation, of voices silenced in the name of profit." Laura began organizing the documents, her business mind already racing. "We need to digitize everything, create secure backups, and we should prepare a new press release incorporating this new information without putting Elena at risk." They worked late into the night, their heads bent together over laptops and papers, their shoulders touching, their energy flowing into each other. The storm outside seemed to mirror their intensity, lightning occasionally illuminating the room in bright flashes. Around midnight, Laura disappeared into her kitchen, returning with cups of herbal tea and what remained of yesterday's takeout. They sat together on her small couch, their work spread around them like a paper sea. "I've been thinking," Daniel said suddenly, his voice thoughtful, "about what Elena said about seeing herself in me, about passing on dreams to the next generation." Sophia looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "When I lost everything, my job, my research, my reputation, I thought that was the end. But maybe it was just part of a larger pattern, a longer fight. Your mother's work found its way to us because she refused to let her dreams die. And now, with the foundation, we have a chance to make those dreams real." "Not just her dreams," Laura added, her eyes intense. "All of our dreams. Everything we've been fighting for separately, we can finally achieve together." The word together hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Sophia found herself studying their faces in the soft lamplight. Daniel's quiet strength, Laura's fierce intelligence, both of them now inextricably woven into her life. "I never thought I'd be grateful for my father's ridiculous marriage ultimatum," she said with a small laugh. "But if he hadn't made that bet, we wouldn't be here," Laura finished, her voice soft. "All of us, together." Daniel reached out, taking both their hands. "Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever your father tries to do, we're stronger together than we ever were apart." The rain had softened to a gentle patter, creating a cozy atmosphere in the small apartment. None of them suggested moving to separate sleeping arrangements this time. They stayed on the couch, holding each other, drawing strength from their connection. Sophia thought about her mother, alone in the mansion with Antonio's anger. But Elena wasn't really alone anymore. She had passed her torch, her dreams, her resistance to a new generation. And that generation was ready to stand up, to fight, openly, to create the change she had only been able to nurture in secret. As she drifted off to sleep, secured between Daniel and Laura, Sophia felt a profound sense of rightness. Their unconventional family, born from crisis and rebellion, had become something beautiful and strong. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new challenges, new opportunities to change the world. But tonight, in this small apartment above the rain-washed streets of Mexico City, they had everything they needed: love, trust, purpose, and the echoing dreams of those who had fought before them, waiting to finally burst into reality. The storm was passing, but its energy remained, transformed into something powerful and unstoppable. Just like them. The Martinez Enterprises boardroom buzzed with tension as board members filed in for the emergency meeting. Sophia, Daniel, and Laura had arrived early, setting up their presentation with calm efficiency that belied their inner turmoil. The morning newspapers lay scattered across the massive oak table, their headlines screaming about corporate scandals and family betrayals. Antonio Martinez strode in last, followed by his team of lawyers. His face betrayed no emotion, but Sophia recognized the dangerous glint in his eyes, the same look he'd worn before destroying countless companies. "Before we begin," Antonio announced, taking his place at the head of the table, "I want to address the baseless allegations that have been circulating. Martinez Enterprises has always operated within the law, prioritizing growth and stability." "Is that what you told yourself when you buried my mother's research?" Sophia interrupted, her voice carrying clearly across the room. The board members stirred, exchanging glances. Antonio's facade cracked slightly. "Your mother's emotional state is not relevant to this meeting." "Actually," Laura stepped forward, distributing folders to each board member, "Elena Martinez's work is extremely relevant. These documents prove that the technologia Innovadora was developing had been conceived decades earlier by none other than your wife." Daniel activated the presentation screen, displaying Elena's original designs alongside the more recent developments. The similarities are undeniable. Martinez Enterprises didn't just destroy a competing company. They attempted to erase innovations that could have transformed communities across Mexico. The board members leafed through the documents, murmurs of surprise and concern filling the room. Antonio's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. "This is a family matter," he growled. "It has no place." "Everything about this is relevant," Sophia cut him off, standing tall. "The foundation we're building isn't just about correcting your recent mistakes, Father. It's about reclaiming decades of lost opportunities, of silenced voices, and buried dreams." An older board member, Mercedes Valdez, spoke up. "These environmental impact reports, they predicted issues we're facing now, issues that have cost us millions in regulatory fines and legal settlements. Problems that could have been avoided," Laura added, "if Elena Martinez's research hadn't been suppressed. The same problems our foundation is now working to address." Antonio slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. I will not sit here and watch my own daughter destroy everything I've built." "No, Father," Sophia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "You built this empire by destroying others. We're here to transform it into something better. She nodded to Daniel, who pulled up the next set of slides. Our proposal is simple. Martinez Enterprises will transition to sustainable practices, implementing the very technologies it once tried to suppress. The foundation will oversee community rehabilitation projects, worker retraining programs, and environmental restoration initiatives. The cost would be astronomical, one of the lawyers protested. The cost of not changing will be higher, Laura countered, presenting detailed financial projections. We've already secured commitments from international investors who specifically support sustainable development. The market is changing, and Martinez Enterprises can either lead that change or become obsolete. The boardroom erupted in debate. Sophia watched as lifetime loyalties wavered, as years of unquestioning obedience gave way to hard business reality. Her father sat silent now, his empire slipping through his fingers. Then a new voice spoke from the doorway. "Everything my daughter says is true." Elena Martinez stood there, elegant and composed, her presence commanding immediate attention. She walked to the center of the room, placing a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "For too long I remained silent while innovation was stifled and communities were harmed. No more." She turned to address the board directly. "You all know me as Antonio's wife, but I am also an engineer, a scientist, and a woman who believes in building things that last. The choice before you today isn't just about business, it's about legacy. What kind of world do we want to leave for our children?" Antonio rose slowly, his face darkening. "Eleanor, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she replied, calmly. "I understood every time you chose profit over progress, control over innovation, but that ends today." The vote that followed was closer than anyone expected, but in the end, the board sided with change. Antonio sat in stunned silence as control of his company shifted, as decades of absolute power crumbled in a single morning. As the board members filed out, already discussing transition plans, Eleanor approached her husband. "It's over, Antonio. Let go before you lose everything." He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, then at Sophia, Daniel, and Laura, standing united nearby. Without a word, he turned and walked out, leaving behind the empire he had sacrificed everything to build. In the aftermath, Sophia hugged her mother tightly. "I still can't believe you came." "I've missed too many important moments," Elena replied softly, "but not anymore." They left the boardroom together, mother and daughter, husband and friend, a family forged in rebellion and strengthened by purpose. Outside, Mexico City sparkled in the morning sun, ready for transformation. The war wasn't over, but today they had won a crucial battle. And more importantly, they had shown that change was possible, that buried dreams could rise again, that love and truth could triumph over power and control. Together, they stepped into the sunlight, ready to build something new. The week following, the board meeting passed in a whirlwind of activity. Sophia, Daniel, and Laura worked tirelessly from Laura's apartment, which had become their unofficial headquarters. The small space was filled with laptops, documents, and the energy of creation as they began implementing their vision for Martinez Enterprises' transformation. "The environmental team starts next week," Daniel announced, looking up from his computer. "We're prioritizing the areas most affected by past corporate practices." Elena's original research is proving invaluable. She'd already mapped out most of the vulnerable zones decades ago. Laura nodded, adding notes to their project timeline. "The community outreach programs are gaining traction too. Former Technologia, Innovadora employees are signing up to lead training initiatives. People want to be part of this change." Sophia watched them work, feeling a profound sense of rightness. The past months had transformed them all. Daniel was no longer the angry engineer seeking justice, but a visionary leader helping to reshape an industry. Laura had emerged from the shadows of past hardships to become a powerful force for change. And Sophia, she was finally becoming the person she was meant to be, not the daughter her father had tried to mold. Eleanor visited regularly, bringing her expertise and quiet strength to their projects. She had moved out of the mansion, taking a small apartment nearby, Antonio hadn't tried to contact either of them since the board meeting. "He'll regroup eventually," Elena had warned. "Men like Antonio don't give up power easily." But for now, they focused on building rather than fighting. The Foundation's first major project was breaking ground, a sustainable housing development incorporating Elena's clean energy designs and Daniel's innovations. One evening, as sunset painted Mexico City in gold and purple, they celebrated their progress with takeout dinner on Laura's balcony. The intimacy between them had grown naturally, unspoken but undeniable. "I've been thinking," Sophia said, setting down her glass of wine, "about what happens next. With us." Daniel and Laura exchanged glances. They had all been dancing around. This conversation, this complex connection that defied conventional labels. "The marriage was supposed to be temporary," Daniel began carefully, "a way to challenge your father's control. But nothing about this is temporary anymore, is it?" Laura's voice was soft but certain. Sophia reached out, taking both their hands. "When my father forced this marriage, he thought he was punishing me. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift, both of you. This family we've created, it's real. Different from anything I expected, but real. More real than anything I've ever known," Daniel agreed, his thumb tracing patterns on Sophia's palm. Laura's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I never thought I'd find this kind of belonging after losing everything. But here, with you both." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights come alive below them. The world was changing, and they were changing with it, creating new forms of love and family that transcended society's expectations. "The Foundation's first community center opens next week," Laura said finally. "We should be there together. Show people that change is possible, that new beginnings can come from unexpected places. Like three people finding love in the midst of corporate warfare." Daniel's smile was tender. "Like a forced marriage becoming a chosen family," Sophia added. "Like defeat transforming into victory." They stayed on the balcony late into the night, planning and dreaming. Their bodies drew naturally together. The distance between them had disappeared, replaced by a certainty that this, however unconventional, was exactly where they belonged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Foundation's work was just beginning, and Antonio's shadow still loomed, somewhere in the background. But tonight, in this small space above the city, they had everything they needed. Love had bloomed in the most unexpected garden, nurtured by shared purpose and mutual understanding. Sophia looked at Daniel, her husband, chosen by fate but embraced by choice, and at Laura, who had become essential to both their lives. Together, they were building not just a foundation for change, but a new kind of happiness, one that defied definition but felt absolutely right. The city hummed below them, ready for transformation. And in this quiet moment, surrounded by the two people who had helped her find her true strength, Sophia knew that every battle, every challenge, every moment of defiance had led them exactly where they needed to be. The community center's grand opening should have been a moment of pure triumph. Sunlight streamed through the building's solar panels, illuminating the gathered crowd as Sophia prepared to give her speech. The structure itself was a testament to their vision, sustainable materials, clean energy systems based on Elena's designs, and spaces dedicated to education and community development. But just as she stepped up to the podium, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from the Martinez Enterprises legal team. She read it quickly, her face paling. "What's wrong?" Laura whispered, appearing at her side. "A group of minority shareholders has filed an injunction," Sophia replied quietly. "They're claiming the company's rapid transition to sustainable practices constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. They're demanding an immediate halt to all Foundation projects." Daniel joined, them having overheard. "Let me guess, shareholders with connections to your father?" Sophia nodded grimly. "But we can't let this overshadow today. These people have been waiting months for this center to open." She stepped forward to address the crowd, pushing aside her concerns to focus on the moment. The assembled community, members, former employees of destroyed companies, residents of affected neighborhoods, students eager to learn new skills, represented everything they'd been fighting for. Today marks not just the opening of a building, Sophia began, but the beginning of a new chapter in our city's story. A chapter where progress and community go hand in hand, where innovation serves the many, not just the few. As she spoke, she saw Elena slip into the back of the crowd, her face tight with worry. Something about her mother's expression sent a chill down Sophia's spine. The rest of the ceremony went smoothly, but as soon as the ribbon was cut and the tours began, Elena pulled them aside into one of the conference rooms. "It's worse than just an injunction," she announced without preamble. "Your father has been meeting with his old business partners, including people who benefited from the destruction of companies like Tecnologia Innovadora. They're forming a coalition to oppose everything we're doing." Laura was already pulling up financial data on her tablet. "They're targeting our funding sources. 3 major investors have suddenly developed concerns about the foundation's direction." "And that's not all," Elena continued. "They're trying to revive old patents, claiming intellectual property rights over technologies that were suppressed years ago. If they succeed, they could effectively block us from implementing any of our clean energy initiatives." Daniel paced the room, his engineer's mind clearly racing. "But your original research predates those patents. We can prove nothing if the documentation disappears," Elena cut in. "Someone broke into my new apartment last night. They were looking for something specific." Sophia felt her heart race. "Are you okay? Why didn't you call us?" "Because I've learned to be prepared," Elena smiled slightly. "The most important documents aren't there, but this proves they're getting desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." Laura moved closer to Sophia and Daniel, her presence steadying. "So we fight back. We've beaten them before." "This is different," Elena warned. "Before they underestimated us. Now they know what we're capable of, and they're bringing everything they have to stop us." Sophia looked around the conference room, its recycled materials and energy-efficient lighting embodying everything they'd worked for. Through the windows, she could see people exploring the center, their faces bright with hope and possibility. "They're right to be afraid," she said finally, "because we're not just changing a company. We're changing the entire system they've profited from for decades." Daniel took her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. "Then we show them that the old system is obsolete, that the future belongs to those willing to build it differently." "We'll need help," Laura added. "More allies, more support from the communities we're trying to serve." Elena watched their interaction with knowing eyes. "You 3 have already accomplished the impossible. The question is, are you ready for an even bigger fight?" Sophia looked at Daniel and Laura, seeing in their faces the same determination she felt. Their bond had been forged in conflict, strengthened by shared purpose, and transformed by love. Whatever came next, they would face it together. "We didn't come this far to stop now," she declared. "If they want a fight, we'll give them one, but on our terms." They spent the rest of the afternoon in that conference room, planning their response while the center buzzed with activity around them. Elena shared insider knowledge of old business alliances, while Laura analyzed financial vulnerabilities and Daniel explored technical solutions. As evening approached, Sophia stood at the window, watching families leave the center with arms full of information packets and hearts full of hope. Behind her, Daniel and Laura worked seamlessly together, their energy flowing into each other, like a perfectly designed system. This was what her father and his allies feared most, not just the loss of profit, but the birth of something new. Something that proved there were better ways to build, to grow, to love. The sun set over Mexico City, painting the solar panels in shades of gold and promise. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight they had added another piece to their vision of a different future. And no amount of legal maneuvers or corporate threats could stop an idea whose time had come. Laura's apartment had become a war room. Maps and documents covered every surface, laptops hummed with activity, and the walls were plastered with sticky notes, tracking their response to the growing opposition. But in the midst of this organized chaos, something else was blooming, a deeper connection between the 3 people at the center of the storm. "The community response has been overwhelming," Laura announced, reviewing the latest reports. When word got out about the legal challenges, People started organizing neighborhood committees to support the foundation. They're sharing their stories, documenting the impact of past corporate practices. Daniel looked up from his workstation, where he'd been analyzing patent documents. And it's not just local anymore. We're getting messages from communities across Mexico, all facing similar battles against corporate exploitation. Sophia sat cross-legged on the couch, surrounded by legal briefs. The past week had been a blur of emergency meetings, press statements, and strategy sessions, but somehow in the midst of this new crisis, she felt stronger than ever. "My mother's network of former colleagues is proving invaluable," she said. "They're coming forward with their own documentation of suppressed innovations. The pattern goes back decades." "Speaking of Elena," Laura began carefully, "she's worried about you. All of us, really. She thinks we should consider additional security measures." Daniel moved to sit beside Sophia, his presence automatically calming her racing thoughts. "She's right. The opposition is getting more aggressive. Those break-in attempts at the community center weren't random. I won't let them intimidate us," Sophia declared, but she leaned into Daniel's warmth, drawing strength from his solidity. Laura joined them on the couch, completing their circle of support. "It's not about fear," Laura said softly. "It's about being smart, protecting what we've built." Sophia looked around the apartment that had become their home. Somehow, in the midst of legal battles and corporate warfare, they had created something beautiful here. Their relationship had deepened beyond the initial arrangement, beyond even conventional definitions of love. "You know what really scares them?" she mused. "Not just the foundation or the technological changes. It's this, what we represent. The fact that people from different worlds can come together, can choose to build something new." Daniel's hand found hers, while Laura's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. The touch was comforting, grounding, full of unspoken understanding. "Then we make that our strength," Laura suggested. "Show people that change is possible, that new ways of living and loving and working can coexist." A notification pinged on all their phones simultaneously. Another press release from the opposition, this one questioning the moral character of the Foundation's leadership. "They're trying to turn this personal," Daniel growled, "using our relationship against us." But Sophia felt a sudden clarity. "No, they're giving us an opportunity. We've been so focused on the technical and legal battles, we forgot the human story." She stood up, energized by the idea. People connect with stories, and ours? A forced marriage that turned into real love, a friendship that became family, a rebellion that grew into a movement for change. That's powerful. Laura's eyes lit up with understanding. A narrative that proves their whole worldview wrong. That shows how their attempts to control and divide actually brought people together. They worked late into the night, crafting their response, but this time, instead of just technical documents and legal arguments, they shared their personal journey. The Foundation's newsletter filled with stories, not just theirs, but those of community members, former employees, and others who had found new purpose in their movement. As midnight approached, they finally took a break. The city hummed. Below them, a constant reminder of all they were fighting for. Sophia found herself wrapped in an embrace between Daniel and Laura, their bodies fitting together with practiced ease. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "this is real. What we've built, what we've become, it's more than any of us imagined." "And that's exactly why we'll win," Laura replied, her voice full of certainty. "Because we're not just fighting against something anymore. We're fighting for something, for each other, for a different way of being in the world." Daniel kissed Sophia's temple, then smiled at Laura. "For love that doesn't fit in their neat corporate boxes." The night wrapped around them like a blanket, secure in their shared warmth. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more challenges, more opportunities to prove that change was possible. But tonight, in this small apartment above the city, they had everything they needed. Their love might not follow conventional rules, but it had become their greatest strength, proof that hearts and minds could expand, that families could be chosen, that the future belonged to those brave enough to imagine it differently. And no amount of legal threats or public criticism could diminish the truth they lived every day, that love in all its forms was the most powerful force for change. The Martinez Enterprises shareholders' meeting loomed like a gathering storm on the horizon. Sophia stood at the window of her restored office, watching rain clouds darken the Mexico City skyline. Behind her, Daniel and Laura were reviewing their presentation one final time. All the documentation is verified, Laura confirmed, organizing their evidence folders. Elena's original research, the suppressed patents, the community impact studies, everything tells the same story. And we have support from key institutional investors, Daniel added. They see the future in sustainable development. The old guard is losing ground. A knock at the door interrupted their preparation. Elena entered, her face tight with concern. There's something you need to see. She handed Sophia a manila envelope, worn with age. I found this in a safety deposit box your father doesn't know about. I've been saving it for the right moment. Inside were photographs and documents dating back to the early days of Martinez Enterprises. Sophia spread them across her desk, Daniel and Laura gathering close to examine them. These are the original board meetings, Elena explained, when your father first began acquiring companies. But look at who else is in the pictures. Sophia's breath caught as she recognized faces, younger versions of the very people now leading the opposition against them. But there was more. These financial records, Laura said, her business acumen catching details others might miss. They show a pattern of systematic suppression, not just of technology, but of people. Communities targeted, innovations buried, lives disrupted, all to maintain control. Daniel finished, his voice hard with understanding. They built an empire by destroying possibilities. A message flashed on Sophia's phone. The shareholders were gathering early. The timeline they'd carefully planned was suddenly accelerating. They know, Eleanor said simply. Someone must have tipped them off about these records. We need to move now. Sophia looked at Daniel and Laura, seeing in their faces the same determination she felt. This wasn't just about winning a corporate battle anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of destruction that had spanned generations. They moved quickly through the building's corridors, Elena's evidence secure in Sophia's briefcase. The usually busy halls were strangely quiet, as if the whole building was holding its breath. The shareholders' meeting room was packed when they arrived. Antonio sat at the head table, surrounded by his allies. His face showed no surprise at their entrance. He'd been expecting this confrontation. Before we begin, he announced smoothly, I have some concerns about the Foundation's recent activities. No, Sophia interrupted, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Before we begin, there's something everyone needs to see. She nodded to Laura, who connected their presentation to the room's display system. The old photographs appeared on screen, drawing murmurs of recognition from the assembled shareholders. 30 years ago, Sophia began, a group of men decided they had the right to control not just a company, but the future itself. They systematically destroyed innovations that could have transformed lives. They buried dreams that didn't fit their vision of profit. Daniel stepped forward, adding technical context to the evidence. Laura followed with financial analysis that revealed the true cost of their actions. Together, they painted a picture of decades of calculated suppression. But they made one crucial mistake. Elena spoke up from the back of the room. They thought they could control the future forever. They forgot that truth, like nature, finds a way to break through. Antonio's face had gone pale with rage. This is absurd. These records are completely verified, Laura cut in. And there's more. The communities you tried to silence, they're speaking up. The innovations you buried, they're resurfacing. The future you tried to control, it's already here. Sophia moved to stand between Daniel and Laura, drawing strength from their presence. Today isn't about removing leadership or changing policies. It's about choosing what kind of company we want to be, what kind of future we want to build. The room erupted in debate. Shareholders argued passionately, alliances shifted, and decades of unquestioned power began to crumble. Through it all, Sophia felt anchored by the two people beside her. Daniel's hand steady on her back, Laura's quiet strength radiating support. They had become more than partners in rebellion. They were her foundation, her home, her truth. As the final votes were tallied, As the old guard's power finally broke, Sophia looked at her father. His empire was transforming, becoming something he never imagined. Something better. "You haven't won," he said quietly as he passed her on his way out. "You've just changed the rules of the game." "No, father," she replied. "We've stopped playing games altogether. This is reality now, messy, challenging, and full of possibilities you never dared to imagine." The rain had stopped outside, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Sophia stood with Daniel and Laura watching the light transform the city below. They had won a crucial battle, but the real work was just beginning. Building something new was harder than destroying the old. But as she looked at the two people who had become her everything, Sophia knew they were ready for whatever came next. Together, they were stronger than any storm. The sunset painted Laura's balcony in shades of gold and promise as they celebrated their victory. A week had passed since the shareholders' meeting, and the world felt simultaneously bigger and more intimate. Sophia sat between Daniel and Laura, sharing a bottle of wine and the quiet satisfaction of dreams taking shape. "The first sustainable housing project breaks ground next week," Laura announced, scrolling through updates on her tablet. "And the community center's training programs are already at full capacity." Daniel smiled, his fingers intertwined with Sophia's. "Eleanor's been incredible. She's connecting us with scientists and engineers who've been waiting years to implement their innovations. It's like watching buried seeds finally bloom." Sophia leaned back, taking in the sight of Mexico City transforming in the fading light. Cranes dotted the horizon, not just for luxury developments anymore, but for community projects, sustainable infrastructure, the physical manifestation of their vision. "Have you heard from your father?" Laura asked gently. "No," Sophia replied. "But Mother says he's traveling. Apparently he needs time to think," which is probably the healthiest response he's had to anything in years. They sat in comfortable silence, their bodies naturally gravitating together. The boundaries between them had dissolved over the months, replaced by a connection that defied conventional labels. "I've been thinking," Daniel said finally, "about our arrangement, the marriage that started all this." Sophia felt her heart skip. "What about it?" "Maybe it's time to make it real, not just legal, but..." He hesitated, looking between Sophia and Laura. "All of us together properly." Laura's breath caught. "Daniel." "I know it's not traditional," he continued, "but nothing about us has ever been traditional. And what we've built, this love, this family, it's more real than anything I've ever known." Sophia turned to face them both, her heart full of emotion. "He's right. We've been dancing around this for months, pretending our feelings fit into normal categories. But they don't, do they?" "No," Laura whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "They never have." The city lights began to twinkle below them as Sophia took both their hands. "So let's stop pretending. Let's build something as revolutionary in our personal lives as what we're building in the world." "A family of choice," Daniel agreed. "Based on love and understanding, not convention and control." Laura laughed softly. "Your father would probably have another corporate crisis if he knew." "Good," Sophia grinned. "Let's give him something new to think about during his travels." They spent the rest of the evening planning, not just their personal future, but the Foundation's next projects. The lines between work and love had blurred long ago, their shared purpose as much a part of their relationship as their emotional connection. Eleanor called during dinner, her voice warm with approval when they shared their decision. "Love finds its own shape," she said wisely. "I learned that too late in my own life. Don't waste time trying to fit your hearts into other people's boxes." As night fell, they moved inside, but the energy between them had shifted. What had been unspoken was now acknowledged. What had been tentative was now certain. "We should buy a bigger place," Laura mused, looking around her small apartment that had somehow become home to all of them. "Something we can build together. With a proper office for the Foundation," Daniel added, "and space for community meetings. And a balcony," Sophia insisted. "I've grown attached to watching the city transform from above." They fell asleep, tangled together, their dreams mixing with plans for the future. Outside, Mexico City hummed with possibility, ready for change, ready for love that dared to define itself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to reshape the world. But tonight, in this small space above the city, they had everything they needed. They had chosen each other, chosen love over convention, chosen to build something new. And in that choice, they had found not just happiness but purpose, not just love but revolution. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities as boundless as their hearts. Together, they would write it their own way, in a language of love that needed no translation. And somewhere in the city below, seeds of change continued to bloom, nurtured by the same courage that had brought three hearts together in perfect, unconventional harmony. The spring sun warmed the construction site as Sophia walked through what would soon become the foundation's new headquarters. Workers bustled around her, installing solar panels designed from Eleanor's original blueprints. Daniel stood with the project managers, discussing technical specifications, while Laura led a group of community representatives through the planned training facilities. 6 months had passed since their confrontation with the old guard, and Mexico City was blooming with change. The foundation's projects had spread across the city like wildflowers after rain: sustainable housing developments, community centers, green technology initiatives. The South Wing will be ready next week, Daniel reported, joining Sophia as she surveyed the progress. We're incorporating all the environmental innovations that were suppressed for so long. It's like watching history heal itself. Sophia leaned into his embrace, watching Laura expertly handle questions from the community leaders. Their relationship had deepened and strengthened over the months, defying traditional definitions, but feeling more right than anything she'd ever known. "Have you seen the latest impact reports?" Laura asked, joining them after concluding her tour. "The first wave of training programs has already placed over 200 people in green technology jobs, and that's just the beginning," Sophia smiled, making space for Laura in their embrace. "Mother's network of scientists and engineers keeps growing. It's like there was this whole underground movement of innovators just waiting for their chance." They walked together through the construction site, their shoulders brushing, their steps in sync. Workers nodded respectfully as they passed, not because of the Martinez name anymore, but because of what they were building together. "The Community Council meets tomorrow," Laura reminded them. "They want to discuss expanding the educational programs to more neighborhoods. We should invite them to the house for dinner after," Daniel suggested. "That worked well last time. People feel more comfortable sharing their real concerns in a home setting." Their new home, a restored colonial house in Roma Norte, had become a gathering place for dreamers and builders of all kinds. The formal living room had been converted into a meeting space, while the garden hosted regular community events. Elena was already there when they arrived home that evening, preparing dinner in the kitchen that had become her favorite place to plot positive conspiracies. "The Environmental Ministry called," she announced, stirring something that smelled delicious. "They want to use our model as a template for national regulations, and your father sent a message." Sophia paused in the act of setting the table. "Oh? He's been visiting sustainable development projects in Europe," Elena continued. "Apparently he's doing research. It's the first time in 40 years he's admitted he might have something to learn." They shared quiet smiles at this small but significant shift. Antonio's journey toward understanding was slow, but at least it had begun. After dinner, they gathered in their favorite spot, the rooftop garden they'd created together. The Mexico City skyline sparkled around them, beautiful and full of possibility. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how much has changed," Laura mused, curled comfortably between Sophia and Daniel on their outdoor sofa. "A year ago, I was just trying to survive. Now we're building the future we always dreamed about." Daniel completed her thought, his arm around both of them. "Together." Sophia looked at her chosen family, her partners in love and revolution, and felt her heart swell. "Remember when my father thought he was punishing me with that marriage ultimatum? He had no idea he was actually giving me everything I never knew I needed." The night air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers they'd planted together. Below them, the city hummed with life and potential. Their foundation was growing, their love was deepening, and their dreams were taking physical form in steel and stone and hope. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more challenges, more opportunities to reshape the world. But tonight, under the stars that seemed to shine more brightly over their transformed city, they had everything they needed. They had built something revolutionary in their work, in their love, in their very way of being in the world. And they were just getting started. The future stretched before them, not as a battle to be won, but as a garden to be tended. Together, they would nurture it, watch it grow, help it bloom in ways that even they couldn't yet imagine. And somewhere, in the city, someone else was daring to dream differently, inspired by their story of love that defied conventions and change that transformed worlds. The revolution they'd started wasn't just in technology or business. It was in the heart, in the soul, in the very way people imagined what was possible. And that was the most powerful change of all. 5 years had passed since that fateful dinner when Antonio Martinez had tried to control his daughter's life with a reckless bet. The Martinez Foundation headquarters gleamed in the morning sun, its solar panels catching the light like diamonds, its community gardens blooming with life and possibility. Sophia stood in her office, looking out over the transformed cityscape. Green technology projects dotted the horizon, sustainable housing, developments, community centers, innovation hubs. But more beautiful than the physical changes were the transformations in people's lives. The latest graduation ceremony is about to start, Laura announced, entering with her tablet and the warm smile that still made Sophia's heart skip. 300 new environmental engineering students, all from communities that used to be excluded from such opportunities. Daniel joined them, bringing coffee and the quiet strength that had become as essential as air. And the international delegations arrive next week. Apparently, our model of community-based sustainable development is attracting attention worldwide. Sophia leaned into their embrace, marveling at how natural it felt. This love that had blossomed in the midst of revolution, this family they had built together. Their relationship had become a symbol of possibility, proving that hearts, like communities, could grow in unexpected ways. Yelena arrived as they were preparing to leave for the ceremony, her face bright with pride. The latest environmental impact reports are in. The changes we've implemented have reduced industrial pollution by 60% in targeted areas. And, Father? Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. Still traveling, Elena smiled, but he sends regular updates about sustainable projects he's discovering. I think he's finally understanding that true legacy isn't about control. It's about contribution. They made their way to the Foundation's amphitheater, where families were gathering to celebrate their graduating loved ones. The scene was everything they had dreamed of, people from all walks of life united in purpose, building a better future together. As Sophia took the stage to address the graduates, she saw in their faces the same fire that had driven her own transformation. 5 years ago, we began with a simple idea that change is possible when we dare to imagine things differently. When we choose love over fear, collaboration over control, hope over hatred. She looked at Daniel and Laura in the front row, her heart full of gratitude. We learned that family isn't just about blood or tradition. It's about choosing each other, supporting each other, building something beautiful together. The ceremony flowed into a community celebration, with food and music and the joyful chaos of dreams taking flight. Young engineers shared ideas with experienced innovators, community leaders planned new projects, and children played in gardens that had once been wastelands. As evening approached, they retreated to their home, the beautiful old house they'd restored together, filled with love and purpose and possibility. The rooftop garden had become a jungle of life, each plant representing a memory of victory, a moment of growth. Do you ever think about that night? Laura asked as they settled into their favorite spot, when Antonio made that ridiculous bet. Sometimes, Sophia admitted, nestled between her partners. But mostly, I think about everything that grew from it, how his attempt to control me actually set me free. Daniel kissed her temple softly. Free to find your own path, free to love in your own way, free to build something revolutionary. They sat together under the stars, their bodies and hearts. Intertwined, watching the city they'd helped transform. The lights below told stories of change. Communities rebuilt, innovations unleashed, lives transformed. Their love had become part of that transformation. What had started as an arranged marriage had blossomed into something extraordinary. A partnership of three hearts beating in perfect harmony, proving that love, like change, knew no bounds. The foundation would continue to grow, spreading seeds of change across borders and boundaries. Their story would inspire others to dream differently, to love boldly, to build fearlessly. But their greatest legacy wasn't in the buildings they'd raised or the programs they'd created. It was in the truth they lived every day, that love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force for change in the world. As night fell over Mexico City, Sophia looked at the two people who had become her everything. Together, they had transformed. A moment of crisis into a lifetime of purpose. They had built not just projects and programs, but a new way of being in the world. And somewhere in the city, someone else was finding the courage to love differently, to dream bigger, to challenge the boundaries of what was possible. Because that was the true legacy of their revolution. Not just the changes they'd made, but the changes they'd inspired others to make. Not just the love they'd found, but the love they'd helped others find the courage to embrace. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility, rich with purpose, endless with love. And that was just the beginning. The morning newspaper landed on Sophia's desk with a soft thud, its headlines screaming about international controversy. Global corporations unite against Martinez Foundation model. The words seemed to mock their recent celebrations of success. They're calling us a threat to traditional business practices, Laura explained, highlighting key passages in the article. Major companies from 3 continents are forming a coalition to protect established economic frameworks. Daniel paced near the window of their shared office at the Foundation headquarters, his engineer's mind already calculating scenarios. This isn't just about us anymore. They're worried our model will inspire similar changes worldwide. And they should be, Sophia replied, a familiar fire lighting in her eyes. We've proven that sustainable development and community empowerment can be profitable. That's what really scares them. The past 5 years had transformed their organization from a local rebellion into a global movement. But with greater influence came greater opposition. The corporate world was finally recognizing them as a serious threat to business as usual. Elena arrived with her own stack of reports, her face bearing the concerned expression they'd learned to take seriously. It's not just media pressure. They're targeting our international partnerships, trying to block expansion of our programs in other countries. How bad is it? Laura asked, already pulling up their project timelines. 3 major development projects in South America have lost their primary funding, and our European partners are facing unprecedented regulatory scrutiny. Sophia felt Daniel's hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. Their personal connection had only grown stronger through years of challenges, their unconventional family becoming a source of strength that sustained them through every battle. We knew this would happen eventually, Daniel said quietly. The bigger we grew, the more we'd threaten the old power structures. Laura moved to join them, completing their circle of support. So we fight back. We've done it before. It's different this time, Elena cautioned. These aren't just individual companies. It's an entire system trying to protect itself. They'll use every tool they have to discredit our work, to prove that profit and social good can't coexist. Sophia walked to the window, watching workers install new solar panels on a nearby community center. Every project, every innovation, every life changed was a testament to the truth they'd discovered, that a better way was possible. Then we show them what we've built here, she decided, not just the technology or the profits, but the communities, the people, the real change that happens when you put power back in the hands of those who were excluded. A global summit, Laura suggested, her strategic mind already planning. Bring leaders from every community we've worked with, showcase the actual impact on people's lives. Daniel nodded enthusiastically. And demonstrate our latest innovations. Prove that sustainable. Technology isn't just environmentally responsible, it's more efficient, more profitable in the long run. Eleanor watched them with pride, seeing in their united response the strength that had made their movement unstoppable. "I'll contact our international partners. Many of them have been waiting for a chance to stand up publicly." As they began, planning their response to this new threat, Sophia felt a familiar warmth in her chest. Every challenge they'd faced had only made them stronger, their love deeper, their purpose clearer. Looking at Daniel and Laura working seamlessly together, she remembered how this had all started, with her father's attempt to control her through an arranged marriage. Now that forced union had blossomed into something revolutionary, a love that defied conventions and inspired others to question established norms. "We should host the summit here," she announced. "Let them see Mexico City's transformation firsthand. Show them what's possible when you dare to imagine a different future." The day stretched into evening as they developed their strategy. Other foundation leaders joined the planning, bringing reports of support pouring in from unexpected quarters. Their revolution had planted seeds that were growing beyond their control, beyond their borders, beyond their wildest dreams. As night fell over the city, Sophia, Daniel, and Laura retreated to their rooftop garden. The lights of Mexico City sparkled below them, each one representing a life touched by their work, a dream made possible, a change that couldn't be reversed. "They think they can stop us with corporate pressure and media attacks," Laura mused, nestled between her partners. "They don't understand what we've built here." "No," Daniel agreed, his arms around them both. "They see projects and profits. They don't see the hearts we've changed, the hope we've created." Sophia looked at her chosen family, feeling the strength of their connection flow through her. "Then let's show them. Let's show the world that love, for each other, for our communities, for our planet, is the most revolutionary force of all." The night air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, carrying promises of battles yet to come. But they would face them as they had faced everything else, together, united by love that knew no bounds and purpose that transcended profit. The corporate world might be gathering its forces against them, but they had something stronger than money or power. They had truth, they had each other, and they had a vision of the future that couldn't be suppressed. The revolution was about to go global, and they were ready. The Foundation's headquarters hummed with unprecedented activity as preparations for the global summit accelerated. Representatives from 6 continents were arriving daily, each bringing stories of both resistance and hope. Sophia watched from the mezzanine as Laura expertly coordinated logistics with their international teams. "The European delegation just landed," Laura announced, looking up from her tablet. "And the Asian partners have confirmed their presentations on urban renewal projects." Daniel emerged from his latest meeting with sustainable technology innovators, his eyes bright with excitement. "Wait until you see what our partners in Africa have developed. Their solar storage solutions are revolutionary." The summit was growing beyond their initial expectations, becoming a gathering of dreamers and doers from around the world. But with each confirmation came new challenges, new threats, new attempts to derail their momentum. Security picked up. "Another attempt to breach our systems," Elena reported, joining them with fresh concerns. "They're getting more sophisticated in their attacks." Sophia felt the familiar tension in her shoulders, but the sight of Daniel and Laura working together, complementing each other's strengths, helped center her. Their love had become her anchor through every storm. "What about the counter-conference?" Laura asked, referring to the corporate coalition's competing event scheduled for the same week. "They're flying in economists and experts to discredit our model," Elena confirmed, claiming that our success in Mexico City can't be replicated globally. Daniel's hand found Sophia's, squeezing gently. "They still don't understand. This isn't about replication. It's about inspiration. Each community finds its own way, builds its own version of change." The afternoon sun streamed through the building's solar windows, creating patterns of light that danced across their planning boards. Maps showed the spread of their influence. Green dots representing completed projects, blue ones marking initiatives in progress, yellow highlighting future possibilities. "The media coverage is intensifying," Laura noted, pulling up recent articles. "But it's not all negative. People are asking questions, challenging the traditional narrative. Our story is resonating." Sophia studied the latest reports, feeling a mix of pride and determination, because it's not just our story anymore. It's the story of every community that's found its voice, every innovator who's dared to dream differently. They worked late, into the evening, finalizing schedules and coordinating presentations. The summit would showcase not just technological innovations, but the human stories behind them. The communities transformed, the lives changed, the hope restored. As night fell, they retreated to their home, seeking refuge in their private sanctuary. Their living room had become a war room of sorts, filled with plans and presentations, but also with the warm energy of family and love. "Remember when we thought we were just fighting one company?" Laura mused as they prepared dinner together, their movements in the kitchen choreographed by years of intimacy. Daniel smiled, passing her the herbs she reached for before she asked, "Now we're challenging the entire global economic system." "And winning," Sophia added, watching her partners work in perfect harmony. Their relationship had become a model of its own, proving that love could transcend traditional boundaries, that families could take unexpected shapes. Elena joined them for dinner, bringing updates from their international partners. "The resistance is growing stronger, but so is our support. People are ready for change." They gathered on their rooftop garden afterward, their favorite place for serious discussions. The Mexico City skyline had transformed during their years of work. More green spaces, more solar panels, more signs of community revival. "The summit has to be more than just presentations and protests," Sophia said thoughtfully. "We need to show them something they can't ignore, the actual human impact of our work." Laura's eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we don't just tell them? What if we show them? Community tours, real interactions with people whose lives have changed. And live demonstrations of the technology in action," Daniel added enthusiastically. "Let them see how practical and profitable sustainable innovation can be." They planned late into the night, their vision expanding with each suggestion. The summit was becoming more than a response to corporate opposition. It was an opportunity to showcase a new way of thinking about progress, about development, about love itself. As the moon rose over their transformed city, Sophia looked at her chosen family with deep gratitude. Every challenge had only strengthened their bond. Every battle had proved the power of their unconventional love. "They think they can stop us with corporate power and economic threats," she said softly. "But they don't understand what really drives us." Daniel and Laura moved closer, their warmth enveloping her. "Love," Laura whispered. "Purpose," Daniel added. "Truth," Sophia completed the thought. The night wrapped around them like a protective blanket as they sat together, planning their next revolution. The global summit was approaching, bringing with it new challenges and opportunities, but they were ready. They had each other, they had their vision, and they had a love that continued to transform everyone it touched. The world was about to discover that true change started in the heart. Mexico City's convention center had been transformed into a vibrant showcase of global innovation. Solar panels and vertical gardens adorned the exterior, while inside, delegations from around the world shared stories of transformation and hope. Sophia stood at the entrance, watching the diverse crowd flow into the building, their energy palpable. "The morning sessions are already overbooked," Laura reported, coordinating with security teams through her earpiece. "And the community presentations have drawn twice the expected attendance." Daniel joined them, fresh from checking the technical demonstrations. "The Brazilian team's water purification system is drawing huge crowds. Even some corporate skeptics seem impressed." Their triumph was interrupted by Elena's arrival, her expression tense. "The opposition's making their move. They're holding a press conference across town, announcing a comprehensive study of our model's economic impacts." "Let them," Sophia replied confidently. "We have something better than studies. We have results. Real people, real changes, real hope." The summit's main hall was packed as Sophia took the stage for the opening address. Faces from every corner of the world looked back at her, each representing a community touched by their vision. Daniel and Laura sat in the front row, their presence giving her strength. "5 years ago," she began, "we started with a simple idea, that profit and purpose could work together, that communities could thrive while businesses grew, that love could transform not just hearts, but entire systems. As she spoke, screens behind her showed images of their projects worldwide: sustainable housing in Colombia, solar farms in Kenya, community centers in India. Each image represented countless lives changed, countless dreams restored. "They say our model can't work globally," she continued. "They say we're threatening economic stability, but look around you. Look at what we've built together. This isn't about destroying systems. It's about evolving them into something better." The applause was thunderous, but Sophia noticed movement at the back of the hall. Representatives from the corporate coalition had arrived, their faces stern with disapproval. Laura was already moving to handle the situation, her diplomatic skills honed by years of practice. Daniel stood ready to support her, their teamwork as seamless in crisis as in love. The day unfolded in a series of powerful presentations. Community leaders shared stories of transformation, engineers demonstrated sustainable innovations, and economists presented data proving the viability of their model. But opposition grew as well. News channels broadcast competing narratives, corporate leaders made dire predictions, and social media buzzed with heated debates. During a brief break, Sophia found herself in the rooftop garden they'd installed at the convention center. Daniel and Laura joined her, their presence immediately calming her nerves. "They're scared," Laura observed, watching helicopters circle the building. "We're bigger than they expected, more organized, more successful." Daniel nodded, his arm around Sophia's waist. "And we're gaining support from unexpected quarters. Did you see the young corporate executives in the afternoon session? They're starting to question their own company's practices." A message from Elena interrupted their moment of peace. The corporate coalition had announced major policy changes aimed at making their model of development more difficult to implement internationally. Sophia felt her partner's arms tighten around her. "They still think this is about policies and procedures," she said softly. "They don't understand that we're offering something more powerful: hope." The afternoon sessions resumed with increased energy. Community tours showed visitors the real impact of their work in Mexico City. Technical demonstrations proved the practical benefits of sustainable innovation. And throughout it all, connections formed between people from different corners of the world, united by a shared vision of change. As evening approached, Sophia watched delegations sharing ideas, forming partnerships, planning new initiatives. The summit was becoming more than a response to opposition. It was a catalyst for global transformation. Laura organized an impromptu dinner for key representatives in their rooftop garden. Under the stars, leaders from different continents found common ground, shared challenges, and built alliances. "This is how real change happens," Daniel observed, watching the interactions. "Not through corporate mandates, but through human connections." Sophia looked at her chosen family: Daniel's quiet strength, Laura's brilliant mind, their shared love that had started as an arranged marriage and blossomed into something revolutionary. "We're not just fighting against something anymore," she realized. "We're building something new, something they can't stop because it's already living in people's hearts." The city lights sparkled below them as the first day of the summit drew to a close. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opposition, new opportunities for change. But tonight, watching the world come together in their transformed city, Sophia felt the power of their revolution. It wasn't just about business models or sustainable technology anymore. It was about love, for each other, for their communities, for the possibility of a better world. And love, they had learned, was the most unstoppable force of all. The summit's second day dawned with unexpected tensions. Overnight, the corporate coalition had released detailed attacks on their financial model, questioning the foundation's transparency and suggesting hidden agendas. Sophia arrived early at the convention center, finding Laura already deep in damage control mode. "Our partners are standing firm," Laura reported, coordinating responses across time zones. "If anything, the attacks are making them more determined." Daniel emerged from an emergency meeting with their technical teams, his face showing both concern and excitement. "The European engineers want to accelerate their clean energy rollout. They say the opposition's desperation proves we're on the right track. Elena arrived with a thick folder of documents. You need to see this, she said, spreading papers across their temporary office. I've been doing some research into the corporate coalition's key players. The documents revealed a complex web of connections, business dealings that stretched back decades, shared investments in industries threatened by sustainable development, personal relationships that influenced policy decisions. Look at these names, Elena pointed out. Many of them were involved in suppressing my research 30 years ago. The same people, the same tactics, just on a global scale now. Sophia felt Daniel's hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. Laura moved closer, her presence completing their circle of strength. The three of them studied the evidence together, their minds working in the synchronized way that had become natural over years of partnership. We can use this, Laura said thoughtfully, not as an attack, but as proof of how systems resist change and why that resistance ultimately fails. The morning sessions were already underway, community leaders sharing success stories that drew emotional responses from the audience. Sophia watched from the back of the hall, seeing hope spread like light across faces from around the world. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Corporate representatives were arriving in greater numbers, some genuinely interested, others clearly there to challenge and dispute. Let them come, Daniel said quietly. Let them see what we've built. Some of them might surprise us. He was right. Throughout the day, even as debates grew heated and challenges intensified, individual transformations were happening. Young executives asked thoughtful questions. Industry veterans shared private doubts about traditional practices. Seeds of change took root in unexpected places. During the afternoon break, Sophia found herself in an impromptu meeting with a group of corporate leaders, not the ones leading the opposition, but younger, more open minds seeking understanding. Your model challenges everything we were taught about business, one admitted. But seeing it in action, it's hard to argue with results. Laura skillfully guided the conversation, showing how sustainable practices could actually increase profitability while creating social good. Daniel added technical insights that made innovative solutions seem not just possible, but practical. The day's final session was their most ambitious, a live-streamed global connection with communities they'd worked with worldwide. On massive screens, people from villages, towns, and cities shared their stories of transformation. A women's cooperative in India showing their solar-powered workshop, a youth program in Brazil demonstrating their community recycling initiative, a green technology startup in Kenya presenting their latest innovations. The corporate representatives watched in silence as evidence of their impact unfolded across continents. This wasn't just about Mexico City anymore. It was about a global movement that had taken root and flourished. As evening fell, Sophia, Daniel and Laura retreated to their rooftop sanctuary. The day's tensions had been exhausting, but their bond remained unshakable. They're realizing they can't stop this with traditional tactics, Laura observed, nestled between her partners. It's grown beyond their control. Because it was never really about control, Daniel added. It's about liberation, of ideas, of possibilities, of love itself. Sophia looked at her chosen family, feeling the depth of their connection. What had started as her father's attempt to control her through an arranged marriage had blossomed into something revolutionary. A love that transcended boundaries, a partnership that transformed worlds. Tomorrow's another battle, she said softly. But tonight we celebrate what we've built. They stayed on the rooftop late into the night, planning strategies but also sharing quiet moments of intimacy. The city sparkled below them, each light, representing a life touched by their work, a dream made possible, a change that couldn't be reversed. The summit would continue, bringing new challenges and opportunities. But they faced them together, their love stronger than any opposition, their purpose clearer than ever, because they had discovered the greatest truth of all, that love in its most revolutionary form could transform not just hearts, but entire worlds. And that was a power no corporate coalition could ever suppress. The summit's third day began with an unexpected visitor. Antonio Martinez stood in the convention center lobby, his presence causing a ripple of whispers through the morning crowd. 5 years of travel and reflection had softened his edges, though his bearing still commanded attention. Sophia saw him first, feeling the familiar tightening in her chest. But this time she was surrounded by strength, Daniel on one side, Laura on the other, their love a shield against old fears. "Father," she acknowledged, her voice steady, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," Antonio admitted, his eyes taking in the transformed space. "But after visiting sustainable projects around the world, after seeing what's possible, I realized I needed to be here." Eleanor emerged from the crowd, approaching her former husband with cautious hope. "You've changed, Antonio." "I've learned," he corrected gently, "and I have something to share with all of you." He opened his briefcase, pulling out documents that made Elena's eyes widen. "These are the original papers from when we first blocked your research," he explained. "Complete. Records of every company we suppressed, every innovation we buried. I've spent years tracking them down." Laura immediately grasped the significance. "This is evidence of systematic suppression of sustainable technology across decades." "More than that," Daniel added, scanning the papers. "It's a roadmap of everything that needs to be rebuilt." The morning's scheduled sessions were forgotten as they gathered in the Foundation's conference room. Antonio laid out not just evidence of past wrongs, but connections to current opposition. "The corporate coalition fighting you now. They're using the same playbook we used 30 years ago," he explained. "But the world has changed. Their tactics won't work anymore." Sophia watched her father carefully, seeing real regret in his eyes. "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what you've built here," he replied. "Not just a successful foundation or a new business model. You've created something I never could, genuine change that comes from love rather than control." The day transformed into a series of powerful revelations. Antonio's documents provided irrefutable evidence of the need for change, while also offering solutions that had been hidden away for decades. News of his testimony spread through the summit like wildfire. Corporate representatives who had been leading the opposition found their positions suddenly untenable. Support for the Foundation's model grew stronger with each passing hour. By afternoon, Eleanor had organized a special session combining historical evidence with current innovations. The past and future merged in a powerful demonstration of possibility. During a break, Sophia found herself in the rooftop garden with her partners processing the day's events. "Your father's conversion will change everything," Laura observed, her strategic mind already calculating implications. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "It's not just about the evidence he brought. It's the symbol of transformation. If Antonio Martinez can change, then anyone can," Sophia completed the thought, leaning into their embrace. The garden around them buzzed with life, a living testament to growth and renewal. The evening session became a spontaneous celebration of change. Representatives from around the world shared their own stories of transformation, of moving from opposition to understanding, from fear to hope. Antonio took the stage last, his presence commanding silence. "For years, I thought power meant control," he began. "I tried to control innovation, to control communities, to control my own daughter's heart. But true power, I've learned, comes from letting go, letting love and truth guide the way forward." Sophia watched from between Daniel and Laura. There, hands clasped together, their hearts beating in sync. Her father's words washed over the crowd, touching hearts that had been closed, opening minds that had been certain. Later, as the sun set over Mexico City, they gathered in their home, an unlikely family united by love and purpose. Antonio and Elena sat together, sharing memories of their early dreams. Daniel and Laura worked on integrating the new evidence into their global strategy. Sophia watched them all, feeling the pieces of her life finally settling into perfect harmony. "You know what this means," Laura said softly, joining her by the window. "The opposition's strongest argument just crumbled." Daniel wrapped his arms around them both. "And our strongest truth just got stronger." Sophia leaned into their embrace, watching the city lights flicker to life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to spread their revolution of love. But tonight, they celebrated not just victory, but vindication. The world was finally ready for the change they'd been creating all along. A change that started with an arranged marriage, blossomed into unconventional love, and grew into a movement that would transform the world. The revolution of the heart was winning. The summit's energy had transformed overnight. Antonio's revelations rippled through the global business community, causing a seismic shift in the conversation about sustainable development. Sophia arrived at the convention center to find the media center buzzing with international coverage. Every major network is covering the story, Laura reported, managing the flood of interview requests. The corporate coalition is falling apart. Key members are already distancing themselves from the opposition. Daniel emerged from an emergency meeting with their technical teams. Companies that were blocking our patents are suddenly interested in collaboration. They're realizing it's better to be part of the change than fight against it. The morning sessions had to be reorganized to accommodate the surge of corporate leaders wanting to learn more about their model. Elena and Antonio worked together, sharing the historical context that made current innovations even more powerful. It's not just about the technology anymore, Elena explained to a packed auditorium. It's about recognizing that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of community, that profit doesn't have to exclude purpose. Sophia watched from the back of the hall, feeling Daniel and Laura's steady presence beside her. Their unconventional family had become a symbol of the very change they were creating, proof that love could transcend traditional boundaries and transform entire systems. The afternoon brought a surprise announcement. Several major corporations, led by former opponents, pledged to adopt the Foundation's model of sustainable development. They're not just acknowledging the past, Laura observed during their strategy session. They're actively investing in the future, because they finally understand, Daniel added. This isn't about destroying business, it's about evolving it into something better. The day flowed into a series of collaborative workshops where former adversaries worked alongside community leaders to plan new initiatives. Sophia moved between sessions, watching barriers break down and connections form. During a brief break, she found herself in the rooftop garden with her father. Antonio stood at the railing, looking out over the city he had once tried to control. "I used to think legacy was about building something permanent," he said quietly. "Now I understand it's about creating something that can grow and change." Sophia felt Daniel and Laura approach, their presence completing her sense of family. "That's what we've been trying to show all along," she replied. "That real strength comes from adaptation, from love, from trust." The evening session became a spontaneous celebration of possibility. Teams from different continents presented joint projects, combining corporate resources with community wisdom. The Foundation's model was evolving in real time, becoming something even more powerful than they had imagined. Back at their home that night, they gathered to process the day's events. Eleanor and Antonio shared stories of their early dreams, while Daniel and Laura worked on integrating new partnerships into their global strategy. "Look at this," Laura called them over to her laptop. "Communities around the world are organizing their own summits, adapting our model to their local needs." Daniel pulled up technical specifications from new corporate partners. And they're not just adopting our technologies, they're contributing their own innovations. The collaboration is exponential. Sophia watched her chosen family work together, marveling at how life had brought them to this moment. What had started as her father's attempt to control her through marriage had blossomed into a revolution of love and purpose. The night deepened around them, but energy continued to flow. Plans were made, dreams were shared, and love grew stronger with each passing moment. "Tomorrow will be different," Laura mused, nestled between her partners on their favorite couch. "Everything's changing so fast. But our core truth remains the same," Daniel replied, his arms around them both. "Love is the most powerful force for change." Sophia looked at her father and mother, now working together to heal old wounds and build new possibilities. She looked at her partners, whose love had defied convention and inspired global transformation. The summit would continue, bringing new challenges and opportunities. But they had proven that their model worked, not just for business, but for life itself. Love could transform systems, heal communities, and build a future better than anyone had imagined, and that was a revolution worth fighting for.